All right, by popular demand, I'm going to put up right here, right now, the History of Religion series from our dear brother over at Truth Unedited. This is a 70 video series. They're all very short videos, but they are 70 videos. So anything that is 70 is going to be rather lengthy, even if it were 10 minutes each, but they are all a little bit longer than that. So I'm going to be updating the description with all the information of the actual videos. Enjoy as we run this whole thing. All praises to the Abba. Enjoy yourselves and the video in its entirety.
In order to understand the many lies that have been given to us over time, we must be educated on the truth. A main part of my ministry is to educate so that lies can be truly seen and bondage be broken. Many people are against Christianity for many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is they don't understand the history behind it. So my next series of videos will be educating my viewers on the history of religion. In an effort to keep the time down, it's just a summary, so if there's something left out or that you don't understand, please leave it in the comments and I'll try to answer it if I can. Let's begin. To begin to understand, we need to start with the beginning of major beliefs. This brings us to Mesopotamia, also known as ancient Babylon. You see, most people that talk against Christianity, most of the time will tell you that Christianity stole their beliefs from ancient Egypt. When anyone says this, it shows a clear lack of understanding of the truth and historic fact. First, the Christianity they're referring to is not Christianity, but Roman Catholicism. Two very different things that historic record and simple understanding of doctrine easily proves. Now, for those with extensive knowledge, let me just point out that I understand we can go further with all this, all the way to Cain and Abel and the mark of Cain. But this video is a brief synopsis, like I said earlier. My goal of the video is to give a basis and foundation in which anyone else that wants to understand can build from. So, this foundation starts post-flood in the first known civilization, Mesopotamia. The mystery religion of ancient Babylon is the beginning of paganism. This period begins after the great flood that destroyed man. The mystery religion has been told in many different stories through many millenniums. It consists of a lot of names of many different gods that are in fact all actually the same gods. Different cultures, different times, different languages, but all the same story, figures, and structure. This is one reason why people try to include Christianity into this. The problem is they're just missing key information. Now, to clarify and explain in the simplest of terms what the mystery religion of Babylon is, it's simply polytheism and or paganism. You've heard this in school. Polytheism is a belief in many gods. The true knowledge of the goal of these gods was only given to the few. These people were the high priest and priestess that passed down the religions. They required the sacrifice to the gods, and they were the only ones able to commune with the gods. They held the secret knowledge, which gave them power over the ones who did not have the knowledge. If someone knew about the sun and when an eclipse would occur, they would seem as if they could control it. The people would then worship and follow that man. This is a simple explanation, but you should get the point from it. In polytheism, in most cultures, you will see the same structure. One man who was God, one virgin woman who was the mother of God, and a son of the mother who was impregnated from the male God. There's Father God, Mother God, and the Son of God. And this is what paganism is. It always follows this structure. And this story started in Mesopotamia, ancient Babylon. So here's the story. Let me just mention that this record is not just supported through the Bible, which only covers it very basically, but comes from the very foundation of Freemasonry and many other books. The difference between me and the majority of naysayers, I will cite sources. You'll see a list of them in the description below. So anyone who discredits this information, please make sure you do the same and cite your sources. After the flood, it was Noah's family chosen to repopulate the earth. He had 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham. The story of paganism comes from the line of Ham. Noah's grandson Cush came from the line of Ham. He did the complete opposite of what God commanded. God commanded them to flourish the earth and worship him. Cush became a leader, though, bringing people all together to live under him. You can see the lines of Ham, Shem, and Japheth in Genesis chapter 10. You see, a lot of times when reading the Bible, we can often skip over this information. But to understand things, you must follow the bloodlines. That's why it's given to us. So back to the story. Cush promoted pure rebellion against God, leading to the creation and building of the Tower of Babel. They wanted to ascend into heaven and defeat God. They wanted to build a structure that if Yahweh ever decided to flood the earth again, they would be able to live through it. They all spoke in one language and decided rather than move away from each other, they could build a kingdom for their own dominion to challenge God. The Tower of Babel is a very important symbol in the occult world. It illustrates rebellion against God and masculinity. They all look the same, hence the erect building. An example of this would be an obelisk like the Washington Monument. The Bible does not explain in detail what was going on with Cush and his followers. All that we know is that he was rebellious and led people to be rebellious as well by building the Tower of Babel. When God came down and saw what it was they were doing, he was not happy. He decided to confuse their languages that no one could understand what either was saying. They were not able to communicate with each other. The building of the tower had stopped. God confused their language, creating the name Babel. Cush was disgraced. So far what you should have gained from this after the flood was there are three lines, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We know that Shem's line came to be the line of Israel, King David, and Jesus. We know that from the line of Ham, the rebellion against God began again. Now after Cush, there was Nimrod, Cush's son. Nimrod was a very powerful hunter. He was mighty. He was also very determined to finish the plan his father started. He conquered all animals and then men. He became leader of the Assyrian Babylonian Empire. Nimrod is the beginning of all the stories that have been passed down over the time about the gods that everyone refers to when denouncing Christianity. His story has developed and transformed him into a god. It all starts with him. Following the occult will lead back to him, but still goes further back to Cain. Either way, it's his story that must be understood to understand what the minds of pagans believe. Nimrod communicated with the spirit world, which guided him to complete great accomplishments like the Tower of Babel. He obtained occult knowledge that gave him power over their people. Nimrod started the first world government, where they all practiced the same religion and were governed under him. They performed human sacrifices and he was in control. They worshipped him as God because he outright challenged Yahweh. Nimrod found rebellion only from his uncle Shem, Noah's other son. Shem abhorred the abominations that Nimrod and Cush had done. Shem followed the commands of God. He plotted with other conspirators and killed Nimrod. More than just killed Nimrod, they cut him up in pieces and sent the pieces to all the different cities that were under Nimrod's rule. Shem did this to show that Nimrod was not a god and for the people to stop what they were doing and start worshiping and obeying the God of his father, Noah. His followers were nervous and frightened. It was obvious that Nimrod was not a god and his father was already defeated. They did not know where to go from there. And that's where the next part of the story brings the real twist and connection. The answer actually came from a woman, the whore. But just recapping, the story of Nimrod is very simple to understand. A man in the beginning claiming power over other people, claiming himself to be God. It's a simple, easy concept to get. The real twist starts, like I said, with the woman. This woman who comes into this picture is Semiramis. Semiramis was the first wife of Cush. She also was the mother of Nimrod. She claimed to be divinely born. After Cush lost power, in order to stay in power, she did the unthinkable thing, in our modern opinion. She married her son Nimrod. Then shortly after Nimrod was killed, she became pregnant and found another way to stay in power. She told the people it was the spirit of Nimrod that impregnated her. She claimed she was having a virgin birth from the spirit of Nimrod. Semiramis slept with no man and was impregnated by Nimrod's spirit, she claimed. Nimrod was now a father and Semiramis was the mother. This is the start and the beginning of father and mother god worship. It is the primary driver of polytheism, but most people will never make the actual connection. You see, Semiramis was able to convince Nimrod's followers that her son was the fulfillment of God's prophecy about Jesus in Genesis 3:15. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. The people believed that her son would be the savior to defeat the serpent. Reality being, it was actually the serpent they'd be worshiping. She managed to convince her followers that Nimrod did not die, but he ascended to the sun. She claimed it was the rays of the sun god, Nimrod, that caused her to conceive. He was now to be worshipped now as Baal, the sun god. She made herself a goddess, claiming that she was divinely created. She was in fact the moon goddess. She had them believe she came down to the earth from the moon in a giant moon egg that fell into the Euphrates River. The Queen of Babylon, aka Madonna, aka Semiramis, became known as the moon goddess Ishtar, which can be pronounced as Easter. And her moon egg became known as Ishtar's egg. You know, Christians should really take this into understanding when they falsely celebrate that pagan holiday, Easter. Now, the son's name was Tammuz. He was now the son of God. He was a sun god reborn, and he was born on the winter solstice. This is where you get the Madonna portrait from, where you see the mother god holding the son of God. Later, Tammuz was killed by a wild pig. Semiramis, now Ishtar, said he ascended to the sun like his father, and now are a union. After Nimrod, Semiramis continued on with their worship and sacrifices. But because of Shem and their constant defeat by God, they changed their approach. What was once done out in the open would now be done in secret. All practices driven from Cush and Nimrod, stemming from the channeling of spirits, would now be done in the dark. It would now become a mystery, only completely revealed to those worthy, the high priests and priestesses. Based from the story of Nimrod, the mystery religion was created. This religion spread among the different ancient empires of Babylon, Egypt, Persia, Greece, and Rome. This is what paganism is, the purest definition of it. Paganism is the collection of all polytheistic beliefs centered around a central belief. The stories may change, the names of the gods may change, but there are always three central figures and a very specific structure. The father god, who is the sun god, the mother god, who is the moon goddess, and the son of God, who is the sun god reborn. Depending on what nation or culture you are from, they went by different names, but they all follow the same structure: father god, mother god, and son of God. This chart illustrates the god and goddess worship of the pagans of different cultures, empires, and religions. It can be quite confusing because there are many different names and stories depending on the nation, region, or culture, but this should give you a strong enough example. In Babylon, the sun god or father god was Nimrod, the moon goddess or mother god was Semiramis, and the son of God, the sun god reborn, was Tammuz. In Egypt, the sun god was Ra, the moon goddess was Isis, and the son of God was Horus. In Greece, the sun god was Zeus, the moon goddess was Artemis, and the son of God was Adonis. In Rome, the sun god was Jupiter, the moon goddess was Diana, and the son of God was Apollo. In Nordic culture, that's the Vikings, the sun god is Odin, the moon goddess was Joro, and the son of God is Thor. In Hindu, the sun god was Vishnu, the moon goddess was Chandra, and the son of God was Krishna. In Roman Catholicism, now this is where most of the trouble and deception comes from, because the sun god is what many refer to as God, the moon goddess is the Virgin Mary, and the son of God is Jesus. Now, this is not to get confused with the true story of Jesus. While we believe in Mary, we do not worship her as a goddess, and we don't refer to her as Mother God. There is only one true God. This is confusion that was put into the world by the Roman Catholic Church, who mixed their pagan gods with the story of Yeshua. I will be doing a video to show the evidence. The main point is though Satan has strategically created the same story, there are significant differences. It's impossible not to see the connection from all the stories of these gods and goddesses. The easiest distinction you'll find when identifying pagan worshipers is they worship both Father and Mother God. If there is both a masculine and feminine God in their belief system, then they are pagan. And that was and is the predominant belief in the world from the ancient times. This is what religion was founded upon. There were many other gods, but there was always a hierarchy, and this god structure was at the top. This whole belief system was only challenged by the Israelites, who claimed they were in communication and the chosen people of the one true God. The battle of monotheism versus polytheism then became fully in effect. One God versus many gods. Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz were immortalized and then worshipped, their names being different, but underlying point of the story is clear. Now, with all these sun gods and moon goddesses, another similarity is that they all were birthed from the same Father. This Father is the ultimate God. He has told the lie that he is the creator and bearer of light, of knowledge. He is the Father God, like referenced earlier. He is the main connection that most people do not make. It's that all these names refer to actually one God. Satan, Lucifer, Baal, many other names. He had many different names in many different cultures. In Babylon, he was Baal. In Egypt, he was Ra. In Greece, he was Zeus. In Rome, he was Jupiter. In Hindu, he was Indra. In Israel, he was Molech. He was the founder of these religions and the ultimate hierarchy of the gods. This was the religion, but it all is Lucifer. Satan has both masculine and feminine qualities. The Most High does not. This pagan belief is all directed towards one goal. It was the goal that Cush and Nimrod both had from the beginning when they established the empire. The ultimate goal is rebellion against God. In order to defeat the Most High and have the world worship Baal as the father god, the mother god Ishtar will again have a virgin birth from Baal, birthing the savior, Baal reborn. This will bring about their rule and dominion again on earth. It's the same story over and over. Regardless of the name of the god, the story and the prophecy are the same. This is the ultimate goal and main deception of Satan. This is where paganism starts, and the story will not end until their lie is complete. Now, you must understand there are plenty that worship Satan as God already, knowing completely in whom they serve. But there is a majority that worship these three gods through other names. This needs to be understood that they are actually worshiping Satan through deception. Many of today's practices and traditions are centered around this deception. You now have a base foundation for stronger understanding and connections. Satan is the master deceiver. This is how he will unite the world to worship him. They already are. They've been doing it in his name through silence and secrecy for thousands of years. He has created many gods and beliefs centered around him that people all around the world accept and worship. People like to go back to the ancient days and refer to spirituality, but what they don't recognize is that these beliefs all center around Satan. It doesn't matter which God it is they choose, because if it's not true belief in Jesus Christ, the true one, not the one mixed in with the pagan beliefs, it will lead everyone to Satan. This is the part of the great deception. Like I said, there was only one challenge to the system and structure. There was only one line of people, one nation that said there was only one true God and that there was no feminine nature to him either. He was the Most High, and they had a covenant with him. This one nation was from the line of Shem, and this was the Israelites, the 12 tribes of Jacob. Without them, there would be no difference in the story of religion. Watch my next video to understand their part. This video is used to break down all the lies and misconceptions surrounding religion, particularly Christianity. It is not a white man or European religion. It is not something used for control or enslavement, except for those who purposely misuse it. It is in fact paganism, which is used for this very goal of control and enslavement. Paganism is actually a European religion, also an African religion, and many other cultures' religion, because it went throughout the whole world. Whenever you hear any religion with that three god structure and many other gods below them, know this is paganism, and beware of all the traditions and cultures that surround the worship of them. There are many. A lot of the prophecy matches God's true prophecy of the Messiah through Jesus Christ. Satan, the deceiver, has used God's plans to deceive man. This is what an antichrist is. The basis and understanding of this information will allow for greater understanding of the traditions the world keeps. It will make you think about what God you actually might be serving without true actualization. The key points to know are: Lucifer is the sun god. The birthday of the sun god is December 25th, around the winter solstice, the time when the sun is closest to the earth. Pagans worship the moon goddess, Goddess Diana, Ishtar, and her many other names. She is the female fertility deity, the Virgin Mother of God, the whore of Babylon. She is worshipped on Easter to celebrate her return each year. This is just a summary of paganism. It should provoke thought in you to make connections with traditions, beliefs, and customs in your own life and review them, and to grow stronger in your belief of the true Savior, Jesus Christ. Learn about him in the Word of God. I love you all. If you watch part 1 of my History of Religion series, you learned what paganism was. It's the polytheistic belief of Father God, Mother God, and Son of God. You learned where it started and where it spread. You may have understood more why people believe Christianity was stolen from Egyptian beliefs, or you may still even believe that lie because you still haven't been exposed enough to the truth about it at all. We can't get too deep into the truth about Christianity without getting to know and understand the children of Israel. This nation of people is extremely important in every sense, and they must be understood completely. You know, it's funny that so many people deny that Jesus existed, but they can never deny his bloodline of people existed before him. They could deny the Bible, but can't deny the children of Israel existed. It's because there's too much evidence. So because they want to continue being a naysayer, they disregard this nation of people as irrelevant. That couldn't be anything further from the truth. Now please note, I'll be condensing a great deal of history into this video series. So please forgive me if I left something out you might have considered important. I'm covering what I think everyone needs to know in order to understand religion and the true world we live in. So let's begin. In part 1, I started post-flood, but I focused more on the line of Ham. Again, if you have not watched this video, please click the link. That information is crucial and foundational. In this part, we will focus on the line of Shem, Noah's other son. Shem had many sons, grandsons, great-grandsons, etc., until there was Abram. Genesis chapter 11 gives a more complete list. God changed his name to Abraham and said he'll make Abraham a great nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, an obvious reference about Jesus, and that kings will come from his line. The Lord established an everlasting covenant between him and Abraham's descendants. He also promised him and his descendants the land of Canaan, which today is known as the land of Israel, which includes Palestine. Abraham had 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Yahweh passed Abraham's covenant to Isaac. Isaac later had 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, so Jacob received the covenant of his father Isaac and grandfather Abraham. Jacob was blessed. God appeared to Jacob and changed his name to Israel and told him to be fruitful and multiply, and the nation shall come from him, and the king shall come from his loins. And the land of Canaan that they were in should be given to his descendants. So be fruitful and multiply he did. Israel had 12 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Joseph, and Benjamin. And these sons are what we know to be the children of Israel. Now, one of those sons, Joseph, was betrayed by his brothers, and they tried to kill him. He didn't die and wound up being a prisoner in Egypt. He was blessed by God and was able to interpret crucial dreams for Pharaoh of Egypt. Because of this skill, Pharaoh gave him a high command in Egypt, and he moved himself and his other 11 brothers, along with his father Jacob, to Egypt. It was while living in Egypt that the children of Israel multiplied greatly, and as time passed, Joseph died, and his influence was no longer there. The Pharaoh of Egypt at the time said, "These Israelites are growing in size and number, and they soon will overtake us if we do not deal harshly with them and overtake them." And it was at this point the tribes of Israel became slaves of Egypt for over 400 years. Now Moses was born of the tribe of Levi, but in order to save him, his mother sent him down the river where the Pharaoh's daughter was compassionate and raised him. When he got older, he killed an Egyptian and he fled Egypt. It was at this time God spoke with him and told him to go back to Egypt and set his people free from captivity. Moses went back to Egypt, and with the help from God, he freed the children of Israel. He brought 9 plagues, but Pharaoh's heart was hardened until the last plague. He got Egypt to give up Israel as slaves by the 10th plague, passed over all of Egypt, and killed all the firstborn. The Lord passed over Israel, who were all commanded to put the blood of a lamb on their doorpost. He showed great power this day and showed himself to Israel for the first time. This is where Passover started from. During this time, Israel grew up amongst Egypt's gods and influence, and though they knew of the covenant established with their forefathers, it was hard for them to believe when all they knew was slavery and captivity. But the Lord sent Moses and freed them. They fled Egypt and were en route to the land that God had promised them. So I would just pause here in the story briefly, because most of this you have probably heard before. The most important detail to know out of all this is that from the line of Shem came Abraham, who God established an everlasting covenant with that would bless the world. From Abraham came Isaac, then Jacob, renamed Israel, and then his 12 sons, which became the 12 tribes of Israel. They were in slavery in Egypt for about 400 years, growing around Egypt's pagan gods, which we learned about in part 1 of this series, until the one true God, through Moses, freed them and displayed his power for the first time. The world would never be the same. The main points of religion begin in this next point of the story, so please take note. Okay, so back to the story. After Israel was freed and on their way to the promised land, the Most High, Yahweh, reaffirmed their covenant. So on their way to the promised land, Moses went up to Mount Sinai to get complete instruction from the Lord, and the Lord established his covenant with the children of Israel. The Lord gave them commands which we know as the 10 Commandments. The Lord said, I am your Lord God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself a carved image. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor anything that is your neighbor's. He told them he was sending an angel that would bring them to the place he prepared for them. The angel will go before them in the midst of the other groups of people, and he will cut them off, all of them. But he also told them something very specific, which was different than any other nation or group have ever heard. He told them that they should not bow down to any of those nations or groups' gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their ways and works, but they shall overtake these groups and tear down their images. In Egypt, he separated himself through the show of his power, and now he commanded them not to commune or even recognize those gods that all those other groups of pagans worshipped. Israel agreed. So it is at this time there is a clear, specific break between the gods of the pagans and the God of Israel. Monotheism versus polytheism. Just take note that being that the nations or groups of this world were significantly stronger in size and influence than Israel, the God must have been very powerful to make such an impact that we have in the world today. Just to add a little common sense thinking in. After this, the Lord called Moses up the mountain, and he gave him tablets of stone and the law and the commandments which he gave. And Moses was to teach. He instructed them to make an ark of wood to carry it in. This will be what we know today as the Ark of the Covenant. He also made Aaron and the sons of the tribe of Levi his priest. So while Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights with the Lord, Israel grew impatient and thought Moses wasn't coming back. And they decided they were going to honor the Lord in their own way. They took off their golden earrings and molded it into a golden calf and said, "This is the God of Israel, which brought us out of the land of Egypt." They built an altar for it and did burnt offerings and peace offerings. They literally did everything the Lord just commanded them not to do. Yahweh was extremely upset. He told Moses to go down there quickly and stop them. He said they were corrupting themselves, and the Lord severely punished them. 3,000 men fell that day. The Lord told them, do not worship him as the pagans do. He was very clear that the ways of the pagans provoked him to anger, and Israel was not to do any of their practices. Again, these were practices that they learned from Egypt, as this is how pagans worship their gods. But the God of Israel did not want this at all. And this is very important for you to know in your worship of God today. This is extremely important, again, to understand, because this was a clear separation from the gods of Egypt and Babylon. This was unheard of because the other nations were all pagan. They had no problem with their gods. Israel was and is the different one, and the one true God did not want them to defile themselves worshiping those pagan gods. A lot went on in these chapters. Israel was very proud, stubborn, and ungrateful people. So, reestablishing the covenant the Lord gave Israel, he gave Israel his law for them to abide and follow. The law was very strict and to be abided by to the letter. All of these rules, instructions, and statutes are known as the law of Moses. These laws were only given to the children of Israel, no other nation. You can read these laws in the end of the book of Exodus, the book of Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy as well. The Lord told the children of Israel specifically what would happen with them if they follow his laws and statutes, and what would happen if they did not. You can find this specifically in Deuteronomy chapter 28. This is very important to understand, especially when trying to understand the truth of who the children of Israel are today in modern times. It's such an important subject and needs a video dedicated to it alone. So back to the story. The children of Israel continue traveling to the promised land. It's important to understand that Israel traveled a long way in the desert, not really sure where they were going. When they got hungry, the Lord sent manna, sweet bread down for them to eat. When they were thirsty, the Lord quenched their thirst. But it wasn't a completely comfortable trip, obviously, because they're in the desert. And though the Lord freed them out of Egypt and did the remarkable things while they were following him to the promised land, they were aggressively complaining and unthankful. Like I said, they were very proud, stubborn, ungrateful people. They even said they wished they never left slavery in Egypt if they were going to have to deal with the kind of conditions they were dealing with at that point. The Lord was so over them. He was so angry with them that besides a few like Joshua and a couple others, he declared no one over the age of 20 would see the land promised to them. The Lord told Israel he chose them to be a people for himself. He did not set his love for them because they were more in number, because the truth was they were the least, but because he loved them and kept the oath made with their fathers. Israel was his chosen people. It took 40 years, but they finally made it to Israel, and at this time, they became their own nation. We can stop here in the introduction of the Israelites, because there's a lot of information needed to understand Israel. From this introduction, the takeaways you should have are: 1. God made an everlasting covenant with Abraham and his descendants. 2. Jacob, later named Israel, son of Isaac, grandson of Abraham, had 12 sons, which came to be the 12 tribes of Israel. 3. Israel was enslaved in Egypt for over 400 years before they came to know their God. 4. Through Moses, God freed Israel from captivity and led them to the land he promised Abraham and Isaac. He instituted the Passover. 5. En route, the Lord gave Israel the 10 Commandments. 6. He also gave them the law, which is known as the law of Moses, only given to Israel. 7. The Lord was only one God and told them to have nothing to do with the other pagan gods. And 8. We now have the only nation that has set themselves apart from the pagan gods worshipped by the other empires, tribes, and nations. This introduction should show that there was always a difference in religions, but it came from one small nation of Israel. And if their God was not as great as he was, and is, nobody would know about them today. This one nation had instructions and statutes that no other nation had, and they were powerful enough to escape Egypt and take over the land of Canaan with all of its inhabitants. This God of Israel should be praised and worshiped. Once you understand the history, you cannot deny the other events surrounding the faith. Please stay tuned for the next video, because the story of Israel really gets hot. There's so much that is misunderstood about Israel today, and sadly it's because we don't read our Bibles. But I will break things down in hopes it will intrigue you to learn more about them on your own. I had to get through this information to get to the points where all the deception takes place. If you're not subscribed, please click the link. If this blessed you, please share it so it can bless others. I thank you for your support. I love you all. In the last part of my series, I introduced the children of Israel, who escaped captivity from Egypt and followed God to the land he promised their forefathers, Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. I explained the children of Israel were extremely important in understanding religion, because it is them that introduced monotheism to the world first. The God of Israel commanded them not to partake with the other nations' gods. He made a clear split from the other tribes and nations' deities, declaring himself the one true God. So before diving back into the story, I must make it clear that I worship the God of Israel for many reasons, but definitely because of his proven power he showed to the world time and time again. I said it in part 1, that Israel being so small, it would not have been able to do what they did and make such an impression in the world if their God wasn't the one true God. The next part of the story is all about him proving this to the world, and it's why I'm covering it. I could have easily moved from Moses to King David, but I believe this information is crucial to understand. I'll tell you why. While people deny Jesus and the Israelites, they cannot deny that the land that they say they occupied existed. So learning about the history of the land and its occupants reinforces the truth. So I challenge anyone in denial to cite sources of other groups that claim this entire piece of land during this time period. Second, in order for the Lord to establish his covenant in the world, he needed to make himself known. So he chose his people, who were few in number, and led them to conquer the land and bring other nations in fear of their God, who was different than all the others. This is part of the story you must know, and is found in the book of Joshua and Judges. For those that don't know, aside from the law and prophecy, the Bible, particularly the Old Testament, is very much a history book of the nation that was in a covenant with the one true God. So let's begin. Part 2 of the story ended when Moses guided Israel to the promised land. Now Moses was old, at least 120 years of age, and was not able to cross into the land. Before letting Israel depart from Moses, the Lord told Moses of Israel's future rebellion. He told Moses, "This people will rise up and go whoring after gods of the strangers of the land, and they will forsake me, and break my covenant which I made with them. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in the day, and I will forsake them. And I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, Are not these evils come upon us, because our God is not among us? And I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evils which they shall have done, in that they have turned unto other gods." Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 16 through 18. It's important to understand this because this is a major part of Israel's history, and the Lord foretold it before it even happened. Now, after Moses, Joshua was made the new leader of Israel. He was purposed with leading Israel to the land God promised them and dividing the land up amongst the tribes. Israel was a small group compared to the other nations, but they were conquering all the inhabitants of the land that they were about to occupy. One of the cities was Jericho. The people of Jericho knew Israel was coming. Some of the inhabitants made a deal with Israel in order to protect their families. They told Israel that they knew the Lord had given Israel that land, and that the terror of Israel had frightened the inhabitants of Jericho. They said they heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea to come out of Egypt, and what they did to the Amorites. They were utterly scared of Israel because of the word that had went around about the power of their God. Again, this was important because it showed how the knowledge of Israel and their God spread amongst the other nations. They were all utterly frightened. So in the story of Jericho, they were commanded to march around the city, one time, 6 days straight. But on the 7th day, they were to march around the city 7 times, and the priests will blow trumpets, and all the people will shout, and the walls of Jericho will fall down flat. And fall it did, and they overtook the city. Again, the Lord showing his power. So as they were conquering these lands, the Lord told them to abstain from these nations they conquered accursed things, or they would be cursed and bring a curse upon Israel. But of course, there was a hard-headed Israelite, and he took some of the accursed things. So he brought anger to the Lord. So when Israel sent out 3,000 men against the nation, the men of that nation struck down about 36 men of Israel's and chased the fighters of Israel out of their gates. Israel got shook up from this. Joshua had to consult with the Lord. Joshua said, "Alas, Lord God, why have you brought this people over the Jordan at all to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? Oh, that we had been content and dwelt on the other side of the Jordan. O Lord, what should I say when Israel turns its back before its enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear it and surround us and cut off your name from the earth. Then what will you do for your great name?" And the Lord said, "Israel has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant, which I've commanded them. For they have even taken some of the accursed things, and both stolen and deceived, and they have also put it among their own stuff. Therefore, the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies. Neither will I be with you any more, unless you destroy the accursed from among you. O Israel, you cannot stand before your enemies until you take away the accursed thing from among you. Then it shall be that he who is taken with the accursed thing shall be burned with fire, he and all that he has, because he has transgressed the covenant of the Lord, and because he has done a disgraceful thing in Israel. So they found a man who took the accursed thing. They stoned him and burned him. I'm telling you, the Lord does not play around. That's why you want to make sure you aren't doing things that he hates. The Lord showed the fierceness of his anger, and after the transgressor was taken care of, the curse was lifted. And Joshua continued conquest of the land of Canaan and its inhabitants. You can see a summary of Joshua's conquest in Joshua chapter 11, verses 16 through 23. It speaks of the kings he conquered in chapter 12 if you want to go more in depth. Joshua took the land and divided it up according to the division of the 12 tribes. It's also important that you know that from the tribe of Joseph came two separate tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, because of Jacob's blessing in Genesis chapter 48. So the land was still divided into 12 tribes, but Joseph's tribe was split into two, and the tribe of Levi didn't get an inheritance of land. They were divided up amongst Israel as the priest, which is why the other tribes were commanded to tithe their crops and increase to them. But that's another point. So the Lord gave Israel all the land of which he swore, and not a man of all their enemies stood against them when he was with them. He delivered all their enemies into their hand. So not a word failed of any good thing the Lord had spoken to Israel. All had come to pass. The Lord again reminded Israel of his command to keep and do all that was written in the law of Moses. And there is not to be any mention of the nation's gods, nor serve them, or bow down to them. And he would continue to drive out the rest of the nations, and none of them would be able to stand against them. He said, one man shall chase 1,000, because it's him who fights for them. But he warned them once again that if they cling to the remnant of those nations and make marriages with them, he will no longer drive those nations out from them, but they will be snares and traps for them. He said, when they transgress the covenant of the Lord and served other gods, then his anger will be against them. You see, there were many warnings given to Israel, but do you think they listened? Of course not. The Lord said it would happen. Remember that. So in the last days of Joshua, Israel still did not complete their conquest of the land that God required of them. Joshua died, and the next generation did not know Joshua, and they were unfaithful to the Lord. The book of Judges tells the history of the different judges that Israel had after the death of Moses and Joshua. You see, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. Please note, he repeatedly said this as a reminder to Israel that he freed them out of the land of Egypt. So you should understand that this was a very important act he did. Remember that as Passover comes around, and those of us who say we love him pay that day no thought, but give remembrance to Ishtar and her eggs. Easter, sorry. But getting back to the story, after Joshua, they followed other gods from among the gods of the people who were all around them, and they bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. They forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtoreth. And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel. So he delivered them into the hands of the plunderers who despoiled them, and he sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, so that they could no longer stand before their enemies. Wherever they went out, the hand of the Lord was against them for calamity, as the Lord had said, and as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were greatly distressed. So the Lord raised up judges who delivered them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but they played the harlot with other gods and bowed down to them. They turned quickly from the way in which their fathers walked and obeying the commandments of the Lord. They didn't do them. And when the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge and delivered them out of the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning, because of those who oppressed them and harassed them. Then when their judge was dead, they reverted and behaved more corruptly than their fathers, again following other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. They never stopped doing what they wanted to do because they had a stubborn way. The Lord was over them again. The Lord told them, I also will no longer drive out before them any of the nations which Joshua left when he died, so that through them I may test Israel, whether they will keep the ways of the Lord, to walk in them as their fathers kept them, or not. So the Lord left those nations without driving them out immediately. The nations the Lord left to test Israel by were 5 lords of the Philistines, all the Canaanites, the Sidonians, and some of the Hivites. Some of the judges of Israel were Othniel, Ehud, Gideon, Samson, and Samuel. Gideon, one of the judges, consulted with the Lord and asked him how all this distress happened to them. He wanted to know where all the miracles were his fathers told them about. He asked the Lord, Did you bring us up from Egypt, but now have forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites? Why? And the Lord told Gideon that he would save Israel out of the hands of the Midianites. So Gideon went and tore down the altar of Baal. As soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel again played the harlot with the Baals and made Baal-berith their god. Thus the children of Israel did not remember the Lord again, and they were overtaken. They pleaded to the Lord again, and the Lord told them, Go cry out to the gods which you chosen. Let them deliver you in your time of distress. But he could no longer endure the misery of Israel. They were his chosen people. It should also be noted that the tribe of Dan exclusively took on idols of other gods and did not remove them. Their history became a little shaky, and not to get ahead of the story in the other parts, when the northern tribes were conquered, the tribe of Dan was done away with from Israel and God's covering. So much so that if you read Revelation chapter 7, when God speaks of sealing his 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe of the tribes of Israel, it should be noted that Dan was not mentioned in these tribes. They took on considerable wickedness, so it was important to highlight. It was said that this tribe went north into what we now know as Europe today. But the main points to walk away with from this part 3 is that, 1, in conquering their land, God was with Israel and fought their battles. He did this so much of the other nations were desperately frightened by the smaller nation of Israel. Number 2, Joshua led Israel in righteousness, and following him, they were able to get the land of their inheritance, which Joshua divided according to the law of Moses. 3, once Joshua died, they disregarded the covenant of their fathers and worshiped Baal over and over. 4, God sent judges to free them from their enemies' hands. They listened for a while and then went right back with their wickedness. Number 5, they continuously did this, and the Lord left some of their enemies around them. Number 6, the Lord showed his power to the rest of the world by bringing Israel into their land upon conquering the other inhabitants. Number 7, Israel continuously disobeyed him, served other gods, and brought about distress and dominion by other groups. All this is important to know when trying to understand Israel completely. This history is not normally discussed, but you must understand Israel, and you also must understand the Lord. He does not just lay silent in our wickedness, and there are things he hates. He does not just turn a blind eye when we convene with other gods and their traditions. Make sure all that you do in his name actually comes from him. Many of us say God knows our heart, but that should make us all worried when our heart leads us to worship him against his ways and desires for us. The God of Israel is very powerful and worthy to be praised. So understand him through Israel's successes and failures. In the next part, Israel pleads to be like the rest of the other nations, this being exactly against what God told them he desired for them. The next part will again show their glory and their fall from it. If you're not subscribed, please make sure you do that now so that you're notified when part 4 comes. Please share this series with anyone with questions about religion and the Bible. My goal is to answer them all and bring back a desire to read God's word. I hope this blesses you. I love you all. In the last video, part 3, you saw Israel receiving the land Elohim promised to them. They conquered much of the land of Canaan, and Elohim was making his great name known. They were blessed as long as they followed Elohim, his law, and his statutes, and did not bow to any of the other nations' gods. They did not follow him completely and were punished many times for their disobedience. We should use part 3 to understand Elohim in a greater way. He does not just ignore our sin and let us live without consequence. If it seems that way, it's because we are blessed to live in the age of grace. The consequence of our sins are not truly realized, but this grace will not be granted forever. Take note of how he reacts to our disobedience and sins. But moving on with the story takes us into much of the years of abundance for Israel. But as they reach what seems to be the height of their glory, the story takes a turn. Use this history in understanding the story of Elohim's chosen people, while understanding how Elohim responds to sin, while also understanding the true purpose of Israel and the purpose for Messiah. Let's begin. So Israel is now set up in their land. The 12 tribes have had their lands divided and distributed according to the Torah, the law of Moses. God had established judges who did not rule Israel, but led Israel in proper worship of Elohim. The last judge was Samuel, who was also a prophet. He was from the tribe of Ephraim. Samuel heard from Elohim from a child. As he grew, Elohim was with him, and all of Israel knew Samuel as a prophet of Elohim. Samuel spoke to all the houses of Israel and said, if you do return to Elohim with all your hearts, then put away the strange gods as Ashtoreth from among you, and prepare your hearts to Elohim, and serve him only, he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. Then the children of Israel did put away Balaam and Ashtoreth, and served Elohim only. As Samuel got older, he made his sons Joel and Abijah judges over Israel. His sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside for dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. Sounds like many modern-day pastors of today, I'd say. Either way, Israel gathered and said to Samuel, look, you're older, and your sons don't walk in your ways. Make us a king to judge us like all the other nations. Israel wanted to be like the other nations that had a king that judged them and spoke for all of them to the other nations. Samuel told Elohim of their request. Elohim told Samuel, heed the voice of the people and all they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So listen to them, but you shall soundly forewarn them and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them. Elohim told them about what would happen if they had a king. He said many things. You can find them in 1 Samuel chapter 8. But he lastly said, you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, and Elohim will not hear you in that day. But Israel, being a stubborn people, refused to obey Samuel and his warning. They said they wanted a king. They wanted to be like all the other nations. Their king would judge them and go before them and fight their battles. Very much like people today don't want to be led by the Holy Spirit, but want their pastors to be their leaders and judges over their lives, making the pastor the final word, though they have the final word in their hand. So Yahweh said, heed their voice and make them a king. Yahweh sent Saul from the tribe of Benjamin to be the first king of Israel. Yahweh told Israel, I brought up Israel out of Egypt and delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians, and from the hand of all kingdoms, and from those who oppressed you. But you have today rejected me, who himself saved you from all your adversities and your tribulations. And you have said to him, no, set a king over us. Now, therefore, present yourselves before Yahweh by your tribes and by your clans. So Saul was the first king of Israel, and he started out righteous. He fought fierce wars for Israel against the Philistines. Saul made a big mistake, though. Yahweh commanded Saul to attack the Amalekites. He wanted to punish them for what Amalek did to Israel, specifically when they ambushed Israel from their exodus of Egypt. So Saul was to go and attack Amalek and destroy all they had and not spare anyone or anything. Now Saul did attack the Amalekites, but he did not destroy everything. He chose for himself the things he wanted to keep from their possessions. Big mistake, Saul. Later, Samuel came to Saul and said, when you were little in your own eyes, were you not head of the tribes of Israel? And did not the Lord anoint you king over Israel? Now the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you swoop down on the soil and do evil in the sight of the Lord? So Saul said, but I have obeyed the voice of the Lord and gone on the mission of which the Lord sent me, and brought back Agag, king of Amalek. I have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the plunder, sheep and oxen, the best of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. So Samuel said, Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he also has rejected you from being king. So Saul lost his anointing, and now will be replaced. Samuel did not go see Saul again until his death. So Samuel was sent to find the next king. He was sent to the tribe of Judah and into the home of Jesse. And out of Jesse's many sons, the smallest one, David, was chosen. He would be the future king. One of the most famous stories of David was when he slayed the giant Goliath with a rock and sling. He told Goliath, You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day Elohim will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. He showed his trust in Elohim to Israel with that moment, but he did not become the king from that action. Saul knew he would be replaced. He knew it would be David. So he became afraid of David because Elohim was obviously with him, and Elohim departed from Saul. So Saul removed David from his presence and made David a captain over 1,000. David performed well and wisely. All of Israel loved David because he went and fought for him. Please note, it's important to understand David because he is what Israel expected their Messiah to be like when they were in captivity by Rome. They expected a King David, and they still expect one. Only when they get him, he'll lead them to hell. That goes for true Israel and the false one. Back to the story. Saul wanted to kill David. He told his son Jonathan of his desire, but Jonathan was a great friend of David. He told David that Saul wanted to kill him. He told David many times of Saul's different plans and allowed David to hide. Jonathan even told him, Do not fear, for the hand of Saul, my father, shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel. And the two of them, both David and Jonathan, made a covenant before the Lord. So it was one day that Saul was delivered to David, but David showed mercy and did not slay Saul. From this, Saul truly knew David was to be king, but he still desired to kill him. David hid from Saul in the land of the Philistines for a little over a year. Then it was that Saul led Israel to fight against the Philistines. In this battle, Saul and his sons died. After Saul's death, David went back to Judah and was declared king over Judah. But Ishbosheth, another son of Saul, was made king over the other tribes of Israel. And at this time, the kingdom of Israel was divided. There was Israel and Judah. Only Judah followed David after the death of Saul. And there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Long story short, Ishbosheth was delivered to David, and the war ended. And David was anointed king over Israel and Judah, and they now were a united kingdom. David lived in Jerusalem, and this was basically the capital of Israel. Now David was a good king. He ruled over Israel justly. Elohim spoke to David through his prophet Nathan and told David, You will build a house for me to dwell in. I took you from the sheepfold, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I have been with you wherever you have gone, and have cut off all your enemies from before you, and have made you a great name, like the name of the great men who are on the earth. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Nor shall the sons of wickedness oppress them any more. When your days are fulfilled, and you rest with your fathers, I will set up your seed after you, who will come from your body, and will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. David was king during a time of war. He had many conquests. 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1 through 13 shows all of David's conquests. Now David was a good king, but he was not perfect. And he made a great mistake, and it was because of a woman. This seems to be where many men make their mistakes. But David fell for a woman, Bathsheba, though she was already married. He laid with her, and she became pregnant with his child. He dealt with this situation by sending her husband Uriah to battle and saw to it he died in battle, though not from a sword of Israel. He thought he was being slick, and no one would be the wiser of his scheme. But Elohim saw and was against David for this. Again, through his prophet Nathan, Elohim told David, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. Why have you despised the commandment of the Lord, to do evil in his sight? You have killed Uriah, the Hittite, with the sword. You have taken his wife to be your wife, and you have killed him with the sword of the people of Ammon. Now therefore, the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah, the Hittite, to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up adversity against you from your own house. The Lord also has put away your sin. You shall not die. However, the child who is born to you shall surely die. And the child of Bathsheba and David did die. David comforted Bathsheba, and she bore him another son, Solomon. Elohim promised that Solomon will be the next king of Israel. So the prophecy of the uprising in David's house came true. It came from his son Absalom. Absalom killed his brother Amnon because Amnon raped Absalom's virgin sister Tamar. David was very mad with Absalom, and this eventually led to Absalom's conspiring against David. Absalom promoted rebellion against Israel to the point that they came against David. The heart of the men of Israel went with Absalom, so David fled Jerusalem, and there was an upheaval in Israel between David and his son Absalom. Obviously, Absalom did not succeed, and he was killed. David mourns him, feeling these things happened because of his iniquities. So David punished the defectors who went against him, and Israel was restored. David's reign continued over all of Israel. So as David got older, his son Adonijah exalted himself and said he would be king. The prophet Nathan and Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, went to David to remind David about the promise of Elohim. David remembered and anointed Solomon as king over Israel and Judah. He blessed Solomon, and Solomon was a new ruler to succeed David. Solomon was the new king. Now it's good to stop here because there's a lot to Solomon and what happens after him. So from this point, it's important to note that 1. Israel rejected God and wanted to be like all the other nations. 2. Saul was the first king, but because of his disobedience, he was removed. 3. David of the tribe of Judah became the next king of Israel. 4. David was not perfect and had problems as king. 5. The children of Israel that rejected Yahshua did so because they were expecting another seed of Judah, very much like David. 6. Elohim is very specific in what he expects from us, and we should follow it before the age of grace runs out. The story of Saul and King David are important because it really highlights how Israel became known amongst the rest of the world. King David was a very powerful and respected king, and through him the rest of the world became blessed. In order to go any further, in the next video, you'll need to learn about the true enemy. You can't defeat him if you don't understand him, and in order to understand religion, you really need to grasp him, and everything after will have effects by him. So you need to understand why, because he used much of this history to bring about his own rebellion. I hope this sparks a desire for you to read Elohim's word on your own. This part specifically came from the 2 books of Samuel. I hope this blesses you. I love you all. If you watched the last 3 parts to my series, I gave a history of Israel, from the blessings of Abraham to the exodus from Egypt, ending at the kings of Israel. It's important to understand Israel because they are the representation of Elohim to the world, how he spreads his great name, and the people he used to bless the world. But this series is about the history of religions, and my goal is to educate my viewers about a majority of religions that bring confusion and draw people away from Elohim and towards Lucifer. I spent a great deal of time speaking on Elohim because he is the beginning and the end of the story. But in order to truly get a handle of what's going on, you must understand the enemy. Now, I do not want to spend a great deal of time on him, and I will not dedicate any time in making cartoon illustrations to explain him. He's not worth it. I'm sorry I even have to make this video, but the information is very important to understand. So please bear with me. In The Art of War by Sun Tzu, one of his strategies were know your enemy. And I agree with that. In fact, the Apostle Paul mentioned this when he wrote to the church at Corinth. In 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11, it says, "Lest Satan should get advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices." But the fact is, so many people today are completely ignorant to Satan's devices, which seems to be the main reason why this world is becoming increasingly more wicked. So I think it is important to understand the enemy, what his goal is, and how he attacks. Ignoring him and acting like he doesn't exist is a horrible strategy and leads anyone who practices it to be deceived. It is my opinion that the modern day church does not teach enough about the enemy. It has been disastrous for the church. Because the church knows little about him, he has been able to cause havoc within the body of Christ. But it's my testimony that I didn't realize how real Elohim was until I realized how real Lucifer was. When I found out that many of my favorite entertainers, athletes, and influencers actually worship Satan, I realized Satan's enemy must be real as well. And Satan's enemy is the God I serve, the God of Israel. So I decided to understand more of my enemy, which changed my life because I began to see the world for what it actually was and not this matrix that we've been made to believe in. So I hope this builds you up and diminishes any influence or power Satan has had over you. A famous quote of the movie Usual Suspects was,
"Greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist."
So that ends today. Let's begin. Chapter 14 in the book of Isaiah tells us about Lucifer. Lucifer was an angel. Ezekiel chapter 28 says he was a great musician, but he was created by Elohim. He did not create himself. Elohim established him. He was full of beauty and wisdom, and he was perfect in his ways when he was first created. But Lucifer got proud and began to conspire against Elohim. His heart was lifted up in his own eye because of his beauty. He corrupted his wisdom in order to promote himself in higher esteem. Lucifer created a rebellion against Elohim and recruited a third of the angels. So a war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against Lucifer and his angels. Lucifer and a third of the angels in heaven were cast down to earth. This is what a fallen angel is. Lucifer's goal was and is to ascend into heaven and exalt his throne above Elohim's. He wants to sit on the throne of Elohim, which is actually our hearts. He wants to be like the Most High. This is Lucifer's goal, and because of this goal, we have religion. All other beliefs that have been established in the world that are contrary to Elohim and his word came from Lucifer. We know this because at the foundation of all these beliefs is always someone being illuminated or receiving the light, which is actually the light of Lucifer. This is what he offered Eve in the garden. Lucifer means light bearer. Never forget his goal is to be exalted and be esteemed as the Most High. And today we are at the ending stages of this goal. This whole goal and plan is exactly what a new world order is. If you haven't watched my video to understand it, there's a link to the video in the description below. The worst part about the whole thing is Satan knows he will lose. Elohim told him his fate, but his desire is just to draw as many as he can away from Elohim. Don't be one of them. In Revelation chapter 12, it is said that the devil, or Satan, whichever you want to call him, deceives the whole world. And he has come down to us having great wrath because he knows he has a short time. In Job chapter 1, Elohim spoke to Satan and asked him, "Where are you coming from?" Satan told him, "From going to and fro on the earth and walking back and forth on it." Remember, Peter says that our adversary, the devil, is like a roaring lion, walking and seeking whom he may devour. Now, how does he work? The first part I'll discuss is through religion. He uses religion to conquer and divide. He has created a belief in many gods, which is paganism. See part 1 to understand this better. Then he creates a way for others to follow and worship him. From him walking to and fro on the earth, he has corrupted most minds of men. He perverts the things of Elohim and deceives the world to worship him. So when you see Israel bowing to Baal and Ashereth in the scriptures, please know this is them following Satan. In the ancient world, it wasn't viewed as religion. It was just which God you bow down to and served and worshipped. But many religions you've heard of today spur from these ancient roots coming from Lucifer. And that's why this part of the series is important. It's important to know that it all comes from and leads to the worship of Lucifer. He's spreading his false light to the world. You already have a better understanding of what paganism is. Soon in this series, I will bring up Kabbalah, Freemasonry, Islam, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, Churchianity, and others. And in order to not continuously have to explain the whys to these religions, you simply just need to understand that Satan is the author of confusion. So many people hate religion, and then it specifically correlates to them hating Yeshua, Jesus Christ. But who they should be hating is Satan, because he's the one who created all the confusion. He disguises himself as an angel of light. And though he creates these religions, the lower level of followers never know they're bowing to Lucifer. This is deception and a big part of the matrix. A person can't say they're #woke if they don't understand this. If they're rejecting Yeshua, they have just accepted some of Lucifer's false light. Another way he works is through his children and recruits who knowingly worship and serve him. When Satan tempted Yeshua in the desert, he promised that if Yeshua bowed to him, he would give him the kingdoms of the world. Many know this temptation, but act as if Yeshua was the only one tempted with this. He gave this promise to many kings and rulers of darkness. They were his seed, going back to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the prophecy. One scripture practically ignored by the church is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. It says that Satan is the god of this world. That's why James chapter 4, verse 4 tells us being a friend of the world makes us an enemy of Elohim. People that speak against the Bible most neverly hear this scripture. It totally contradicts the point that the Bible was written to control the world. If that was true, I don't think they put that one in. I'm just saying. But I digress. There are Satan worshipers, and their whole goal of life is making Satan worshipped as God. This has been the goal of all secret societies, and they have very carefully been transitioning the world to this worship of Satan. They've been given unlimited resources to promote this, and this has been done over the course of history. Now we're at a point where they're so dominant and in control, they no longer need to be in secret. They are now changing the way the world views everything. That's what a new world order is. With their power, they promote Satan's value to the world, dilute the Bible and the church, and work with Satan to deceive the world. You won't see an entertainer, politician, or any influencer that has a strong following gain a platform that the world endorses without them worshiping Satan, or at least bowing to him. The deal is they illustrate his doctrine to the masses, and in return they are paid millions, given fame, and some receive assurances of being safe and still established when the New World Order begins.
Here's a fun fact. This year, the nominated actors will receive gift bags containing $160,000 worth of merchandise, including 2 vacations, makeup, clothes, shoes, and an armored car ride to safety when the revolution comes.
They all sell out or they're removed. Many are required to show this in some way, whether it's flashing a satanic symbol or hand sign, men wearing dresses, or doing some homosexual act, women posing naked, showing the whole world, or something else. They must show their allegiance some way. The Illuminati are real, but it's not what people think it is. The Illuminati simply are the illuminated ones. There's that light again. Remember, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. They're simply spreading the light of Lucifer to the world. The Illuminati is a term they've used today to show Satanism to the world as cool. There was an organization called the Illuminati. It started in the 18th century. But the real power brokers of the world are in different organizations with different hierarchies. Organizations the majority of the general public have not even heard of, or of organizations the public thinks are within the government itself. Today's generation is just being marketed Satanism, and the world is seeing who and will accept it and who will not. Do you know what Satanism is? The doctrine of Satanism is very easy to understand. It's summed up in one sentence. Do whatever you want. Well, it should be, do whatever you want, just as long as it's not worshiping the Most High. This doctrine has been promoted to the rest of the world. Do as thou wilt. Look at Jay-Z wearing this shirt. This saying comes from Aleister Crowley, once designated as the most evil person in the world. Elohim has rules, and Satan's goal is to contradict each one. So after knowing all this, I'm sure you're trying to gather, what's the end game, right? You already learned he wants to be like the Most High. He wants to know where everyone is. That's why we're tracked and monitored. He wants to know what we're thinking and saying, which is why Facebook and other social media tools boast now that they can see now what you're thinking. He wants to be worshipped as God, sitting in the temple of God, which is twofold. The first temple, being our body, is in our hearts, replacing our love for Elohim with love for him. And second, the actual temple in Jerusalem, which he will declare himself as God. They are currently pleading to rebuild the third temple right now. Pay attention to this. Either way, this is why more people than ever need Yeshua. Yeshua is a fulfillment of the Genesis 3:15 prophecy that was said to defeat the serpent. No one makes it to the Father without Yeshua, but the world hates him. Everyone literally has a different reason not to believe in him. They hate the name Jesus, or his Hebrew name, Yeshua HaMashiach. There's even people who claim to love Elohim, the Most High, that hate Yeshua, or people who totally make the purpose of Yeshua's death and resurrection irrelevant. They are all pawns. Satan is deceiving the whole world and does this through attacking us through our flesh. Galatians chapter 5 verses 16 through 26 are great verses for anyone who wants to know the difference between Satan's influence, which comes through our flesh, and Elohim's. He has many different tactics, but a major one that is being used against us is his creating tolerance for him and distractions from Elohim. He has thrown sin and evil in our face that we have been desensitized to it, or just have an unhealthy tolerance to it, that even if we wouldn't actually commit the act ourselves, we aren't bothered when we see others engaging in them. Or he distracts us by pushing entertainment in our face, or placing a spirit of worry or doubt upon us, or placing idols in our lives. These things, and many more, become distractions and remove us from the presence of Elohim. We are so tolerant of the devil and so distracted from Elohim's desire for us that we don't clearly see what's happening before our eyes. Many don't see how close Satan is to being worshipped to the world, and a majority don't see how close Yeshua is to returning. In the next part of the series, we will cover King Solomon, the temple, and the breakup of Israel and Judah. There's a lot of information from the enemy that you may not know of, like Freemasonry's claim to Solomon's temple and what Kabbalah is. I unfortunately had to cover this subject first because Satan really causes a lot of problems and confusion from this point on. It's important you understand why. Again, it's all about drawing people away from Elohim before his time is up. I made this video to inform you of your enemy. It is not possible in a short length of time to fully prepare you, but I hope it places a desire in you to break away from any tolerance and or influence to him that you might have. Don't underestimate him or ignore him or those that work for him. And the list is many. You must pay attention. Break away from thoughts and practices that come from Satan. Prepare yourself as the bride, waiting for the bridegroom, Yeshua HaMashiach. I love you all. In my last video, I introduced the enemy. In order to understand religion in this world, you need to understand him because he created all the confusion. He needed to be discussed because of where the rest of the story goes. This next subject, King Solomon, is in the middle of the pack because while he is a great testament to Elohim and Israel at the beginning of his story, in the end of his story, Satan uses his mistakes a great deal to create doctrine for his story. If you do research on your own on this subject, you must be very careful because there's pure wickedness surrounding it and could be a stumbling block for those not fully grounded in their faith. But if it's not covered and understood, it can be a cause for loss of faith if you come across the enemy side. So I've been praying for guidance from the Holy Spirit to communicate this to you, that it fills you with understanding and removes confusion. Let's begin. Before part 5, we left off with Solomon becoming the next king of Israel after his father, King David. David secured a peaceful situation for Solomon. He defeated all of Israel's enemies so that when Solomon came to the throne, there was no one left to fight. This was also why David was not able to build a temple. He told Solomon, "My son, it was in my mind to build a house unto Elohim. But Elohim came to me and said, you have shed blood abundantly and made great wars. You shall not build a house unto my name. you have shed much blood upon the earth in my sight. A son shall be born to you, who shall be a man of rest. I will give him rest from all his enemies round about. For his name shall be Solomon, and I will give peace and quietness unto Israel in his days. He shall build a house for my name, and he shall be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom over Israel forever. So my son, I have prepared for the house of the Lord 100,000 talents of gold, and 1,000 talents of silver, and of brass and iron without weight, for it is an abundance. Timber also and stone have I prepared. Then David gave Solomon the plans for the temple that he had by the Spirit. The temple was to be a house for Elohim, a holy place in which the Ark of the Covenant would be held, and where burnt offerings would be done. Like he told Solomon, David made preparations for the temple before his death. He gathered the strangers that were in the land of Israel, but not actually of Israel. He had them gather stones to build the house. He prepared iron for the nails, and brass and cedar trees in the abundance. David took care of much of the preparations, being wise in knowing that Solomon was young and inexperienced, and the house that was to be built for Elohim must be exceedingly magnificent, a fame of glory throughout all countries. So he did much of the beginning groundwork. David was a good king. His reign over Israel was for a total of 40 years. From this, Solomon's kingdom was firmly established. So Solomon was now king. Elohim appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. Elohim asked Solomon, "What shall I give you?" Solomon told Elohim, "You've shown great mercy to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in truth and in righteousness and in uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this great kindness for him, and you have given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. Now, Elohim, you have made your servant king instead of my father David, but I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in, and your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore, give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?" This pleased Elohim. He told Solomon, "Because you have asked this thing, and have not asked long life for yourself, nor have asked riches for yourself, nor have asked for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice, behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has not been anyone like you before, nor shall any like you arise after you. And I have also given you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be anyone like you among the kings all your days. So if you walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." So Solomon became the wisest king on earth. An example of his wisdom was when two women appeared before him, each carrying a child, one living, the other dead. One woman accused the other woman of stealing her child after hers died, and the other denied doing so. Solomon, in his wisdom, ordered the living child to be cut in halves with the sword, to be equally given to both women. The problem solved itself, as the mother that accused the woman of taking her child said, "No, just let her keep the living child. Do not slay it." And the accused woman said, "That's fine. Divide it." Solomon gave the child to the right mother, who actually cared. All of Israel heard of the judgment that Solomon had judged, and they feared him because they saw Elohim's wisdom was in him to do judgment. Solomon reigned over all of Israel. In the 4th year of his reign as king, he began the work of building the temple as a house for Elohim. Chapters 5, 6, and 7 of 1 Kings describes this in detail. Solomon selected over 150,000 men to do work for the building of the temple. He sent word to Hiram, king of Tyre. He said, "As you have dealt with David, my father, and sent him cedars to build himself a house to dwell in, so deal with me. Behold, I'm building a temple for Elohim to dedicate it to him. And the temple which I build will be great, for Elohim is greater than all gods. Therefore, send me at once a man skillful to work in gold and silver, and bronze and iron, and purple and crimson and blue, who has skill to engrave with the skillful men who are with me in Judah and Jerusalem, who David, my father, provided." Huram answered back in writing, saying, "Because Elohim loves his people, he has made you king over them. Blessed be Elohim, who made heaven and earth, for he has given King David a wise son, endowed with prudence and understanding, who will build a temple for Elohim and a royal house for himself. And now I have sent a skillful man endowed with understanding, Hiram, my master craftsman, the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan, and his father was a man of Tyre. Skilled to work in gold and silver, bronze and iron, stone and wood, purple and blue, fine linen and crimson, and to make any engraving and to accomplish any plan which may be given to him, with your skillful men and with the skillful men of David your father. The man he sent was Hiram Abith. He was a master mason, and his story is a central core and inspiration for Freemasonry. I will get into it later in the video. But the building of the temple was massive. You can read about how glorious it was in 2 Chronicles chapter 3. At the end of construction, Solomon assembled the leaders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes in Jerusalem, and they brought the Ark of the Covenant from the city of David to the temple. The Levites brought up the Ark and all the holy furnishings. Then all the congregation of Israel who were there did their sacrifices of sheep and oxen and a great multitude. The priests brought the Ark of the Covenant to its place in the inner sanctuary of the temple to the most holy place. When Solomon finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and sacrifices, and the glory of Elohim filled the temple. When all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down and saw the glory of Elohim in the temple, they bowed their faces to the ground on the pavement and worshipped and praised Elohim, all saying, "For he is good, and his mercy endures forever." It took 20 years, but Solomon finished the house of Elohim and successfully accomplished all that came into his heart. This was a remarkable accomplishment, and just reading this, you can feel the Holy Spirit leaping for joy in your heart. It's truly remarkable. You can read it for yourself in 2 Chronicles chapters 5 through 8. So Solomon is now older, and from this temple he built an astonishment for the rest of the world. Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. All the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which Elohim had put in his heart. Remember, Elohim promised this. Solomon made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones. He had a massive amount of gold items. He was truly a splendor. So it was at this time of his splendor where he made his mistakes. His biggest mistake was he loved women. Any man listening to this should learn from Solomon. He loved many foreign women, one of them including the daughter of the Pharaoh of Egypt. Earlier, he made a treaty with the Pharaoh of Egypt and married the Pharaoh's daughter. He was not supposed to do this. He didn't need a treaty. Elohim was to be Israel's protection. He would fight for them. But as his status of splendor grew, he took on more wives and concubines, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, the Sidonians, and the Hittites. He took wives from these nations of whom Elohim had said to the children of Israel, "You shall not go into them, and neither shall they come into you. For surely they will turn your heart after their gods." But Solomon's flesh was weak. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. These wives turned Solomon's heart away from Elohim. His heart was not loyal to Elohim as was the heart of his father David. He went after the gods and goddesses of these other nations, like Ashtoreth of the Sidonians. Ashtoreth was the name of the moon goddess of the Sidonians or Phoenicians. Don't forget about the pagan structure, in case you didn't understand who Ashtoreth was every time you heard Israel turn to her and Baal. So anyway, Solomon did evil in the sight of Elohim. He built high places to worship Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and to Molech, the abomination of the people of Ammon. He did this other times for all his wives, who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. So Elohim told Solomon, "Because you have done this, and have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom away from you and give it to your servant. Nevertheless, I will not do it in your days, for the sake of your father. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away the whole kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." Elohim then raised up adversity against Solomon. And this is the end of the story for Solomon. He reigned over Israel for 40 years, and in his end, the kingdom of Israel fell apart. The Bible doesn't really speak in depth about the last years of Solomon. You can read and learn from his wisdom in the book of Proverbs. The book of Ecclesiastes is said to be written by him. It is a book that speaks on his remorsefulness and desire to be right with Elohim again. It was said to be written towards the end of his life. His story is not a happy ending. With Solomon's death, expired the glory and power of ancient Israel. And though the scriptures do not go in depth on his level of disobedience and wickedness, It can be inferred that he did a great deal of wickedness based on how the enemy has tried to use him for his doctrine to build his kingdom. This is known specifically through Freemasonry and the occult. The occult world highly references King Solomon. I'm not claiming their beliefs as true or not, but I think it's important to understand the other side. Like I said in part 5, Know Your Enemy. The occult world refers to Solomon as a skilled sorcerer. It's not that he only tolerated paganism, but also participated in it. According to one of the many legends about him, Solomon used pagan magic to imprison 72 rebellious evil kings in a brass vessel, throwing them into a lake where they were supposed to stay until the end of time. The legend also says that in an attempt to find great treasure, the Babylonians rescued the vessel and broke it open, allowing the demons to escape. These demons became known as the 72 spirits of Solomon. Among the Eastern nations is again esteemed as a great magician who had great power over the spirit world. It was said he gained this power from Satan, who gave him a ring of power with a symbol on the ring. This symbol is known as the Seal of Solomon, also known as the Star of David. The Seal of Solomon is a hexagram and hides complex meanings, but it is a symbol used highly in witchcraft. The symbol was supposedly used on Solomon's ring and gave him the power to understand and communicate with animals. Kabbalists and alchemists are very fond of this symbol. It is also hidden on the US dollar. The way it is used today to represent the nation of Israel is very occultic in nature. It is not a symbol of Elohim. In reference to Freemasonry, according to the Freemason Dictionary, the Temple of Solomon plays a very important part. It is said in Freemasonry that Solomon, Huram, king of Tyre, and Hiram Abith resided as grand masters over the lodges which they established. It's said their symbolic degrees were instituted and their systems of initiation were invented, and from that period to the present, Freemasonry has passed them down. It's said that almost all of symbolism of Freemasonry rests upon or is derived from the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. Each Masonic lodge is and must be a symbol of the Jewish temple. Each master in the chair represents King Solomon, and every Freemason is a personation of the Jews who worked on this temple. That's why I did part 5 of this series before introducing this subject. It's important to understand that Satan wants to be like Elohim, so he must use the things of Elohim, but pervert them. This is why there will be an Antichrist. I hope it starts connecting that Satan's primary goal is to pervert the things of Elohim. He's not just making up his own doctrine, but it must be a perversion of Elohim's. This is why the building of the third temple is so important to this new occult age. This is a goal of Freemasonry, and the events transpiring today are being orchestrated by these men within this structure of power. Freemasonry is not just an organization, it is a religion. But I will get into that later in more detail. The point of this knowledge is that from Solomon's mistake, the glory of ancient Israel went downhill, and Lucifer used Solomon's disobedience in creating and establishing his doctrine for future worship of him by his own name. Freemasonry and the occult all use Solomon as a symbol for their rebellion, particularly because of how great and important Solomon was. There is much confusion around Solomon, and my hope is that this part in the series answers some questions. This history is very important to understand. This is the last time you will hear of a united 12 tribes of Israel. In the next part of the series, we will learn about the division of the two kingdoms, Israel and Judah. Have you heard of the 10 lost tribes of Israel? This understanding will be coming up. I hope this sparks a desire for you to dig into Elohim's word and rebuke Satan at every turn. The goal of this series is for us not to be ignorant of Satan's devices. I hope that turns to be true for you. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe to get the notification of the next part of the series. Thanks for watching. If this blessed you, please share it with others. Have Bible studies around the topics and keep the discussion of Elohim's word going. Thank you for your support. I love you all. In part 6 of the series, we learned about King Solomon. Solomon was a very interesting king. From him, we saw the heights of Israel and how Elohim established his great name and Israel's name amongst the other nations. But right after the rise, we saw the reason for the fall. Israel did not see the result of his mistakes until after his death, but Elohim prophesied and foretold what was to come. A theme you should have noticed from this series by now is that Elohim keeps his word. So we're now at the fall of Israel. Throughout the next two parts, you will hear two constant themes: a king who did right in the eyes of Elohim, and kings who did not do right. You'll hear more of the latter, unfortunately. I find that this part of the Bible is not taught at the level it should be. The history directly helps us understand multiple points. The most important point is why Elohim preserved David in Jerusalem to send forth the Messiah. It shows why Israel expected a different type of Savior than what Yeshua was. And lastly, this history shows the significance of the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28, because you'll see specifically that Israel did not follow Elohim as they were commanded. The main thing I want to emphasize is that Elohim is loving and understanding and gives us many chances. Israel kept messing up. Then he sometimes scolded them, and he also gave them a chance to fix their mistakes. They continuously made bad choices and later suffered greatly for them. It's the same thing we face in our lives today. We continually sin and provoke Elohim to anger, but he gives us grace and forgives us. But he does sometimes scold and reprimand us. Use these lessons to gain more appreciation, understanding, trust, and love for Elohim. Let's begin. So we ended part 6 with King Solomon and his transgressions against Elohim. He sinned massively, creating confusion and setting a table for Satan to take advantage. Elohim told Solomon he would not remove him as king, and he would preserve the care of Jerusalem with Judah for David's sake. So the changes in the kingdom of Israel did not occur until Solomon's death. Solomon was king of Israel for 40 years. Before his end, Jeroboam, a servant of Solomon from the tribe of Ephraim, was met by the prophet Ahijah. Ahijah took a piece of his clothing and tore it to 12 pieces. He told Jeroboam, "Take for yourself 10 pieces, and thus says Yahweh, behold, I will tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and I will give 10 tribes to you, and he shall have 1 tribe for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, because Israel has forsaken me." And Solomon did not do right in my eyes, and keep my statutes and my judges, as did his father. However, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, because I've made him ruler all the days of his life for the sake of my servant David. But I will take the kingdom out of his sons, and give it to you 10 tribes, and to Solomon I will give 1 tribe, that my servant David may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen for myself to put my name there. So I will take you, and you shall reign over all your heart's desire, and you shall be king over Israel. And if you heed all that I command you, walk in my ways, and do what is right in my sight as my servant David, then I will be with you and build for you an enduring house. Solomon knew about this and tried to kill Jeroboam. So Jeroboam fled to Egypt. So Solomon later died, and his son Rehoboam was now going to be king. His son Rehoboam went to a city in Israel to be crowned king, and all of Israel, including Jeroboam, went for the crowning. After being made king, the leaders of Israel spoke to Rehoboam and said, "Your father Solomon made our burden heavy. Will you not lighten the load of service required of your father, and we will serve you?" Rehoboam spoke to the elders, and they told him, "If you will be a servant to these people today and serve them and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever." He rejected that advice, though, and consulted also with his friends he grew up with, and they told him, "Make their burdens heavier." And that was the advice he listened to. Rehoboam went back to Israel and told them, "My little finger shall be thicker than my father's waist, and now as my father put a heavy burden on you, I will add to that burden. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges." When all of Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, they said, "What share have we in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to your own house, O David." And from this, Israel was in rebellion against the house of David or Judah to this day. There was no more united kingdom of the 12 tribes. Israel made Jeroboam king. He reigned over the northern 10 tribes, and Rehoboam was king over Judah and Benjamin. The capital of Judah was Jerusalem, and the capital of Israel was Samaria. Rehoboam wanted to start a war, but Elohim did not let him. So we are now at a point of a divided kingdom, consisting of many different kings of both Israel and Judah. There's a lot of history amongst these kings, but for time purposes, I will not go over all the details. If you want more details, you can read about this all in 1st and 2nd Kings and 2nd Chronicles. So we have King Jeroboam of Israel and King Rehoboam of Judah. Jeroboam did not trust in Elohim and built his own shrines and high places. He made 2 calves of gold and told the people, "Since it's too much to go to Jerusalem, here are your gods. They can be worshipped in Bethel and one in Dan." He made priests from every class of people, not just from the sons of Levi. He did evil in the sight of Elohim. King Rehoboam did evil as well. He did not prepare his heart to seek Elohim. Judah provoked Elohim to jealousy by serving other gods. They built them in high places, sacred pillars, and wooden images on every high hill. They did according to all the abominations of the nations which Elohim had cast up before Israel. Both kings did evil in the sight of Elohim. And this continued down the line of kings. Some did good in the sight of Elohim, and many did evil in his sight. Let's follow this chart. You can see from this chart the kings that served Elohim and the ones that did evil in the sight of Elohim. Like I said, if you want specifics on each king, I do recommend you reading 1st and 2nd Kings, as well as 2nd Chronicles. The history is quite interesting. 2nd Chronicles is literally just another account of what you'll find in 1st and 2nd Kings. Some have different details than others, but this is the history of ancient Israel, and it must be understood. If you want a copy of this chart, I will have it on my website for you. The link to it is in the description. So let's understand a few things from this. The first thing to understand is the kings of Israel. All the 10 northern tribes did a lot of evil. They all were found evil in the sight of Elohim. Each one seemed to be exceedingly more wicked than the next. The worst one seemed to be King Ahab. He was horrible because he had help. He took Jezebel, a daughter of the king of the Sidonians, as his wife. And together they set up an altar for Baal in the temple of Baal, which he built in Samaria. Jezebel herself massacred prophets of Elohim. She was just killing prophets and establishing prophets of Baal. This is where we become introduced to the prophet Elijah. Elijah was labeled a troubler of Israel because he spoke overzealously against the wickedness in Israel. He went to meet King Ahab even though Ahab was looking to kill him. Elijah told King Ahab, "I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, in that you have forsaken the commandments of Elohim and followed Baal. Now, therefore, send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, as well as the 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, who all eat at Jezebel's table." Ahab agreed and did so. Elijah came to all the people and said, "How long will you falter between two opinions? If Elohim is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. I alone am left a prophet of Elohim, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. So here's what we'll do. Let them give us 2 bulls. Let Baal's prophets choose 1 bull, cut it into pieces, and lay it on wood, but put no fire under it. I will do the same with my bull. Then you call on the name of your gods, and I'll call on the name of Elohim. The God who answers by fire, he is God." So they took the challenge. The prophets of Baal prepared the bull, called on the name of Baal from morning to noon, saying, "O Baal, hear us." But there was no voice. No one answered. Elijah mocked them, saying, "Cry louder, for he is God, right? Either he's meditating, or he's busy, or maybe he's on a journey, or maybe he's sleeping, and he must be awakened." So they cried louder, cut themselves until blood gushed out, as is their custom in the world of all devil worship, but no one answered. So it was Elijah's turn. Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of sons of Jacob. Then he built an altar in the name of Elohim. He put the wood in order, cut the bull in pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then at the time of the evening sacrifice, Elijah said, "O Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and I'm your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, O Elohim. Hear me, that this people may know that you are God, and that you have turned their hearts back to you again." Then the fire of Elohim fell and consumed the burnt sacrifices. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, Elohim, he is God. Elohim, he is God. Elijah then said, seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let one of them escape. And so they seized them. Elijah brought them down to the brook and executed them. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had executed all the prophets. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah and said, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow at this time. So Elijah went and hid in a cave. Elohim came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? And Elijah said, I have been very zealous for you, Elohim, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life. Elohim told him, go return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Syria. Anoint Jehu as king over Israel, and Elisha as prophet in your place. It shall be whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu will kill, and whoever escapes Jehu, Elisha will kill. Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. Elohim also told Elijah in reference to Jezebel, on the plot of ground at Jezreel, dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the corpse of Jezebel shall be refused on the surface of the field in the plot at Jezreel. So they shall not say, here lies Jezebel. So all of this was done. Ahab's complete line was destroyed, and Jehu became king over Israel. Jehu found Jezebel, and she was killed. Her flesh was eaten by dogs, nothing to bury. And remember, she asked for it. Elisha was made a prophet to replace Elijah. As they were both walking, Elohim called up Elijah to heaven. Another example of Elohim preserving those loyal to him. Now, Jezebel is important to understand. This Jezebel spirit is a wicked one. She is notoriously known for being the greatest enemy of the prophets of Israel. According to Kim Daniels' Demon Dictionary, Jezebel is a spirit that operates by absolute power. Control and manipulation are at its foundation. All that was left of Jezebel after the dogs devoured her were her hands, feet, and skull. Her hands represent stopping the work of Elohim in our lives. Her feet represent being demonically led by her. And her skull represents mind control. She's overly controlling, and you will often see that spirit manifest to drive people away from Elohim. There is also the Ahab spirit. This is a spirit that comes upon leadership to cause them to walk in the ways of the ungodly and to turn the hearts of the people towards idolatry. This spirit not only puts up with the Jezebel, but is also in total agreement with and works with the Jezebel spirit. You should beware of these spirits. Do not go against these spirits without understanding spiritual warfare. I will devote some teaching to this. I explained this part of the story because it's important to understand Elijah and just the extent to how wicked Israel was. They were worshiping Baal. Elijah is important to understand because he was one of the boldest prophets. In a very wicked time where it seemed all the northern tribes worshiped Baal, Elijah took belief in Elohim and challenged all of Baal's prophets, all the way to a point where he was hunted. If you parallel that to these times, I hope his story gives you strength. We are again in a very wicked time. It seems everyone practices some form of Baal worship. But if this video does anything, I hope that it builds up a bunch of Elijahs, men and women confident in the God they serve and ready to stand up against the Baals. Elijah was protected, and you are too, if you put your trust in him. Elohim took care of him because he was loyal to Elohim. His heart was good. I pray that strengthens you to ask Elohim for protection because of your overzealousness for him and your intolerance for Baal. Preach the good news and expose wickedness. But there's so much to this part of the story, I had to split the information up. The points you need to understand from this part are: 1. Because of Solomon's sins, the kingdom of Israel was taken from his line. 2. The 10 northern tribes split and were now known as Israel. 3. Judah and Benjamin were only known as Judah, and it was preserved because of Elohim's covenant with David and him choosing Jerusalem as his city. 4. The kings of Israel all did evil in the sight of Elohim and worshiped Baal. 5. Elijah, a prophet, stood for Elohim, challenged the prophets of Baal, and won, later executing the prophets. 6. Elijah was called up to heaven for his obedience. Part 8 will continue with this story because there's much more to understand. I hope this summary gives you good information and encourages you to read all of this on your own. This is truly remarkable information. This is pure history, and if people just knew this history, I feel it would directly defeat many people's stumbling block in their belief. But what I pray for most is that what it has done is raise up bold Elijahs prepared to be overzealous for Elohim and plead the blood of Yeshua over everything in their lives. Thanks for watching. I love you all. In the last part of my series, part 7, we saw the split between Israel and Judah. Because of King Solomon's sins, Elohim split up the kingdom of Israel. The northern 10 tribes split up from Judah and Benjamin, and there now was a divided kingdom. As you will see from this part, the united kingdom of Israel was never seen again. The children of Israel did not obey the covenant they had with Elohim, and what we are witnessing at this point of the story is what happens at the point of disobedience and rebellion against Elohim. There are many different points to take into consideration from understanding this part. What I want to be emphasized above all is the consequences of our sin. When you review the information from all these series, the one thing that should be abundantly clear is that Elohim loves us. He continues to give us chance after chance. The point that needs to be clear is that he never just moves against his people without warning. Throughout this history of Israel, there are many different prophets that Elohim spoke through, and they spoke very intensely against sin. They spoke in urgency for Israel and Judah to come back to the covenant their fathers made with Elohim. But they ignored it and later paid the price for it. As you understand this history, please make sure you examine this within your own life. Has Elohim been trying to connect with you? Are you rejecting parts of his word? Are you being lukewarm? I'm not a prophet, but I do know the urgency of today, and I ask that you parallel the lessons that you learn from this part in this series with your own life, making sure you do not repeat the mistakes of Israel and mocking the many warnings Elohim has been giving you. Let's begin. So we left with the end of the rule of Ahab and Jezebel. We also saw Elijah being caught up to heaven for his zeal for Elohim. This time period was in the middle of the reign of kings of both Israel and Judah. Again, this chart is on my website for you to review. The link is in the description below. The northern 10 tribes never got the point that they were to serve Elohim. Jehu was appointed king over Israel. He removed all who remained loyal to Ahab in Samaria. Jehu gathered all of Israel together and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little. Jehu will serve him much. Now, therefore, call to me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, and all his priests. Let no one be missing, for I have a great sacrifice for Baal. Whoever is missing shall not live. But Jehu acted deceptively, with the intent of destroying the worshippers of Baal. And Jehu said, proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal. So they proclaimed it. All the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left who did not come. So they came into the temple of Baal, and the temple of Baal was full. Jehu went into the temple of Baal and said to the worshippers of Baal, search and see that no servants of Yahweh are here with you, but only the worshippers of Baal. So they went in to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had appointed for himself 80 men on the outside, and had said, if any of the men whom I have brought into your hand escapes, whoever lets him escape, it shall be his life for the life of the other. When he ended the burnt offering, Jehu said to the guard and to the captains, go in and kill them. Let no one come out. And they killed them with the edge of the sword. Then the guards and the officers threw them out and went into the inner room of the temple of Baal. They broke down the sacred pillar of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal. Jehu destroyed Baal from Israel. Elohim even spoke to him and told him, because you have done well in doing what is right in my sight, and have done to the house of Ahab all that was in my heart, your sons shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. But Jehu took no heed to walk in the law of Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, with all his heart. For he did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, who had made Israel sin. Elohim let Jehu's sons reign up to the 4th generation, as was his word to Jehu. All of Jehu's sons continued in the sin of Jeroboam. Remember, Jeroboam was the first king when Israel split from Judah. He set the tone of sin for those in the northern 10 tribes, and as we go down the list of these kings of Israel, they all did evil in the sight of Elohim and caused Israel to sin greatly. During these times, there were prophets that continuously pleaded with Israel to turn away from their sins. The Old Testament is filled with history, but it also has books written by many of these prophets that were spoken to by Elohim to go back to the people and warn them of their sins. In Israel, the prophets were Ahijah, Elijah, Elisha, Jonah, Amos, and Hosea. They all were given a word from Elohim to warn Israel of their sins. Israel was continuously warned that they were provoking Elohim to anger. Elohim continued to send out men to warn his children, but their hearts were far from him, so they did not heed the warnings. I don't know about you, but it sounds an awful lot like today. Elohim has placed urgency and warnings in so many of his children. Many of us give it out to whomever will hear it, but sometimes it feels like it falls on deaf ears. One day, those warnings will be old, and it will be too late, just like what happens next to Israel. Israel was rebellious through all the different kings they had. They all did evil in the sight of Elohim. Elohim eventually removed his protection against Israel, and they were overtaken by Assyria. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, went throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it for 3 years. The king of Assyria then took the people of Israel captive and removed them out of their lands. You can read this specifically in 2 Kings chapter 17. Elohim rejected all the descendants of Israel. He afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of the plunderers until he had cast Israel from his sight, as he has said by all his servants, the prophets. The children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They never departed from them. Israel was carried away from their own land to Assyria and did not return back to the land. The land of the northern 10 tribes was captured and conquered. The king of Assyria brought people from other nations like Babylon to dwell in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. These nations feared Elohim, but they did not serve him, and they defiled the land. Israel never reclaimed his land again. The 10 northern tribes were scattered and lost. This is where we get the 10 lost tribes of Israel. All the tribes of Israel, besides Judah and Benjamin, were lost. They were captured and then scattered. The one thing we know for sure about them, without a doubt, is that Elohim is not through with them yet. According to Revelation chapter 7, there will be 12,000 from each of those 10 tribes that will be sealed, all except the tribe of Dan, which I discussed briefly in part 3. But this is the story of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. To read the end of this story yourself, again, you can find it in 2 Kings chapter 17. So now we're back to Judah. If you go back to the chart, Judah was mixed. There were good kings and there were bad kings. They lasted longer than the northern 10 tribes did because some of the kings of Judah sought after Elohim. One of those kings was Hezekiah. In his first year of reign, he reopened the doors of the temple. He spoke to the Levites and said, "Now sanctify yourselves. Sanctify the house of Elohim, the God of your fathers, and carry out the rubbish from the holy place. For our fathers have trespassed and done evil in the eyes of Yahweh, our Elohim. They have forsaken him. They have turned their faces away from the dwelling place of Yahweh and turned their backs on him. Therefore the wrath of Yahweh fell upon Judah and Jerusalem, and he has given them up to trouble, to desolation, and to jeering, as you see with your own eyes. For indeed, because of this, our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons, our daughters, and our wives are in captivity. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, that his fierce wrath may turn away from us." Later on, in Hezekiah's reign, after Israel was overtaken and defeated, another king of Assyria, King Sennacherib, came and entered Judah. He set up camp against the fortified cities, thinking to win them over to himself. Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come and that his purpose was to make war against Jerusalem. He took certain precautions and told his military captains, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid nor dismayed before the king of Assyria, nor before all the multitude that is with him. For there are more with us than with him. With him is an army of flesh, but with us is Yahweh, our Elohim, to help us and to fight our battles." And the people were strengthened by the words of Hezekiah. Sennacherib sent his servants to Jerusalem with a word to Hezekiah and all of Judah, saying, "Thus says Sennacherib, king of Assyria, in what do you trust that you remain under siege of Jerusalem? Does Hezekiah not persuade you to give yourselves over to die by famine and by thirst, saying the Elohim will deliver us from the hand of the king of Assyria? Has not the same Hezekiah taken away his high places and his altars, and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, saying, you shall worship before one altar and burn incense on it? Do you not know what I and my fathers have done to all the peoples of other lands? Were the gods of the nations of those lands in any way able to deliver their lands out of my hand? Who was there among all the gods of those nations that my fathers utterly destroyed that could deliver his people from my hand, that your God should be able to deliver you from my hand? Now therefore, do not let Hezekiah deceive you or persuade you like this, and do not believe him. For no God of any nation or kingdom was able to deliver his people from my hand or the hand of my fathers. How much less will your God deliver you from my hand? Furthermore, his servant spoke against Elohim and against his servant Hezekiah. He also wrote letters to revile Elohim, speaking against him, saying, as the gods of the nations of other lands have not delivered their people from my hand, so the God of Hezekiah will not deliver his people from my hand. Hezekiah sent out to the prophet Isaiah to hear the word he had from Elohim. Isaiah said to the people he sent, thus you shall say to your master, thus says Yahweh, do not be afraid of the words which you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Surely I will send a spirit upon him, and he shall hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. Isaiah sent to King Hezekiah a word saying, thus says Yahweh, because you have prayed to me against Sennacherib, king of Assyria, I have heard. Therefore, thus says Yahweh concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shield, nor build a siege mound against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and he shall not come into this city, says Yahweh, for I will defend this city to save it for my own sake and for my servant David's sake. So in the end, Yahweh sent an angel, which cut off all the mighty men of valor and the leaders and captains in the camp of the king of Assyria. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, returned with shame to his own land. And when he went into the house of his God, his own brothers killed him there with the sword. He went against Judah without being authorized by Elohim to do so. Another lesson on the power of Elohim. But Hezekiah was a good king, and ended that way. And Judah then had a few more kings. King Josiah was the last good one. After him, the kings of Judah continued to do evil in the sight of Elohim. And like Israel, there were prophets that spoke warnings against the wickedness of Judah and what Elohim would do. The prophets of Judah were Joel, Isaiah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Daniel, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah. They all had messages and warnings. And if you take these prophets along with the prophets of Israel, you have many of the other books that make up the Old Testament. There were many different prophecies. Many were specifically about the coming Messiah. I will explain them and cover them in a future part of the series. But in regard to this subject, Elohim sent warnings to Judah by his messengers because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they mocked the messengers of Elohim, despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets until the wrath of Yahweh arose against his people, till there was no remedy. He brought against them Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who killed the young men of Judah with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion on the young men or virgins, on the aged or the weak. Elohim gave them all into his hand, and all the articles from the house of Elohim, great and small, the treasures of the temple, and the treasures of the king and of his leaders, all these he took to Babylon. Then they burned the temple, broke down the wall of Jerusalem, burned all its palaces with fire, and destroyed all its precious possessions. And those who escaped from the sword were carried away to Babylon, where they became servants. This is the first time the temple had been destroyed. It's important to note that. The kingdom of ancient Israel was destroyed. Now this may sound like the end, but it definitely was not. There was prophecy from Jeremiah that foretold that this would happen, as well as how long they would remain in captivity. Elohim preserved Judah like he said he would. He did all this in order to establish his new covenant and keep the promise he made to Abraham. But all of this is the history of ancient Israel. The points you need to understand are: 1. The northern 10 tribes of Israel continue to be disobedient to Elohim. 2. Because of their disobedience, they were overtaken by Assyria. 3. They are referred to as the 10 lost tribes of Israel. 4. Judah had good kings that kept them in favor with Elohim. 5. They eventually continued to rebel against Elohim. 6. They were overtaken by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. 7. Both Israel and Judah were given many warnings by prophets and messengers sent by Elohim. You won't hear any more about the northern 10 tribes. The rest of this story will deal with Judah. We are getting close to the Messiah, and I'm very excited about that. The next part of this series, we will see what happened to Judah while in and out of captivity. I hope this blessed you and opens your eyes and hearts to Elohim. He loves us all very much. He has given us much grace, but the time of grace is running out. Do not be like Israel and Judah, who has heard the word from many different prophets and messengers speaking of the urgency of today, and you do not heed the warnings. I know it can be confusing because it seems everyone wants to claim to be a prophet. I do not claim to be a prophet at all, but I do know he has placed a message in me to tell all to bring all thoughts into captivity of the obedience of the Messiah, Yeshua. Put down all idols and any conformity to this world. Follow Elohim with your full hearts. He has given us the Comforter, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, as a gift to all that receive it, so that we can walk with him personally. We do not need anyone else to intervene to allow us to be close with him. He is our Emmanuel, meaning Elohim in us. Seek him fervently and diligently. There is no better time than today. His love and grace is for all who accepts it. Use Israel and Judah as an example not to play with Elohim. He promised them horrible curses that they're still under today. And while those curses are horrible while living on earth, the penalty for not accepting Yahshua are much more severe. Accept him today and turn from the wickedness of this world. I hope that reached whoever it was for. Again, if you like this video, please give it a like and share it with others. If it has blessed you, please make sure you're subscribed. I thank you for your support. I love you all. In the last part of my video, we saw the fall of Israel. Because of Israel and Judah's wickedness and rebellion, Elohim removed them from their land. The northern 10 tribes were conquered by Assyria. They were taken out of Israel. Later, Judah and Benjamin were taken captive as well. As I said in part 8, we will no longer be discussing the 10 northern tribes. The story is all about Judah. Elohim repeatedly said he was going to preserve Judah and Jerusalem, as was his promise to his servant David. By now you should have learned what happens when you rebel against Elohim. Make it a point in your life to use the lessons of Israel. Elohim is great and worthy to be praised. He is not to be toyed with. Commit your life to him and surrender all to him. This next part takes us into captivity of Judah. Judah is no longer in their land. Towards the end of the 7th century BC, Babylon had overthrown the domination of their longtime rival, Assyria. They eliminated the Assyrian Empire, turning it into what became known as the Neo-Babylonian or Chaldean Empire. Nebuchadnezzar brought Babylon to great heights, and after his conquer of Judah, he deported many Jews to his land of Babylon. One of those exiles was Daniel. Daniel had a very interesting story. His book in the Old Testament speaks on what happened during Judah's captivity in Babylon. This part of the story is used as a testimony to how Elohim works his purposes through his servants, even in the courts of pagan rulers. His story is very much like that of Joseph. No matter where Elohim's chosen people were, those that trusted him proved just how great Elohim really was and is. And this part of the story is all about that. Let's begin. So in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. He carries many of Judah off to Babylon. When they got in Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar instructed Ashpenaz, the one in charge of the exiles, to bring some of the children of Israel, the good-looking ones, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. You see, this is often how a nation gets conquered. It's not just about them being ruled by foreign leaders, but it's about being forced in learning their culture. In a later part of my series, you'll understand Mystery Babylon, the Babylon that was prophesied to come. And you will learn how they did this same practice, teaching those they ruled and took into captivity the ways of their culture. So there were some from Judah chosen. The king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of the time they might serve before the king. Some of those men taken into this training were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Ashpenaz, chief of the exiles, gave them Babylonian names. Daniel was Belteshazzar, to Hananiah was Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. They were given all the fine delicacies. Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies or with the wine which he drank. So he asked Ashpenaz that he might not defile himself. Elohim brought Daniel in good favor of Ashpenaz, and Ashpenaz said, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. So Daniel said to one of the servants Ashpenaz put in charge of them, Daniel said, please test your servant for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he consented with them in this matter, and he tested them 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. So the steward took away the portion of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 young men, Elohim gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. In the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king what his dream was. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has never asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Nebuchadnezzar did not like that answer. He was furious. He gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon, including Daniel and his companions. Daniel asked, why is the decree from the king so urgent? Then the head of the king's guard told Daniel. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time, that he might tell the king the interpretation. Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from Elohim concerning the secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Daniel praised Elohim. Daniel went to the king's guard and said, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. So he was brought to the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen, and its interpretation? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. The image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, the kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. The kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it. Just as you saw the iron mixed with the ceramic clay, and as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, Elohim has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. The king answered Daniel and said, Truly your Elohim is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Also, Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. This is again how Elohim showed his great name. All these new generations had their experience with witnessing how great Elohim was, which is why he is worshipped today. After the exile of Israel and Judah, if Elohim was not so great, we would not know anything of the God of Israel. You must understand this. So later in Nebuchadnezzar's rule, he was really feeling himself. He made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He made all the officials of Babylon gather together for the dedication of the image that he had set up, and they all stood before the image. Then a herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, and lyre, and symphony with all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the Chaldeans decided to hate on Daniel and his companions. They came forward to Nebuchadnezzar and said, There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods, nor worship the gold image which you have set up. Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, then it's all good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it usually was heated. He commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. They were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire even killed the men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "Yes, our king." And he said, "Look, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." Then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire. And the satraps, administrators, governors, and the king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men on whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, their clothes were not affected, and the smell of fire was not on them. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angels and delivered his servants who trusted in him. And they have frustrated the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they should not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree that any people, nation, or language which speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver this." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Use that as a lesson for yourself. When your whole life is threatened for serving Elohim and not following the ways of this world, will you bend, or will you be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and trust in Elohim to protect you no matter what? Their faith was such a testimony, they gained the right to worship Elohim because they allowed him to show how powerful he was. That's the story of faith, but it's not over. Later on, in Nebuchadnezzar's rule, he had a dream which made him afraid and troubled him. He again issued a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before him, that they might make known to him the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in, and he told them the dream, but they couldn't interpret it. Daniel later came before him, and he told him the dream, saying, "Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy God is in you, and no secret troubles you, explain to me the visions of my dream that I have seen and its interpretation." These were the visions of my head while on my bed. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens, and it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heaven dwelt in its branches, and all the flesh was fed from it. I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said, "Chop down the tree and cut off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it and the birds from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump and the roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze and in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts on the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from that of man. Let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him. This decision is by the decree of the watchers, and the sentence by the word of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever he will, and sets over it the lowest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, declare its interpretation, since all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation. But you are able, for the spirit of the holy God is in you." Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for a time, and his thoughts troubled him. So the king spoke and said, "Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation trouble you." Daniel answered and said, "My lord, may the dream concern those who hate you, its interpretation concern your enemies. The tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, whose height reached to the heavens, and which could be seen by all the earth, whose leaves were lovely and its fruit abundant, and which was food for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, in whose branches the birds of heaven have their home. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. For your greatness has grown and reaches to the heavens, and your dominion to the end of the earth. And inasmuch as the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze and tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him. This is the interpretation. O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon the Lord the king. They shall drive you from men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make you eat grass like oxen. They shall wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he chooses. And inasmuch as they gave the command to leave the stump and roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you, after you come to know that heaven rules. Therefore, O king, let my advice be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by being righteous, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity. And all of this did happen to Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. The king spoke, saying, Is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The kingdom has departed from you, and they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make you eat grass like oxen, and 7 times shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he chooses. That very hour the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like bird's claws. In the end, Nebuchadnezzar said, I lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He does according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. No one can restrain his hand or say to him, What have you done? At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my honor and splendor returned to me. My counselors and nobles resorted to me. I was restored to my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth and his ways justice, and those who walk in pride he is able to put down. So the moral of this story is that Elohim showed that he's in control. Don't ever forget that. Even though the wicked seem to have much power, and we get so caught up in the wicked and their schemes, just remember Elohim is in control always. Do not fear them. Fear him. It's all about him. Elohim's people were cast off into another land by a king who did not know their God. But in the end of his rule, Nebuchadnezzar, the one that overtook Elohim's land of Judah, later recognized Elohim as the Most High and praised him. Nebuchadnezzar even realized it wasn't by Nebuchadnezzar's power that allowed him to rule the people of Judah, but by Elohim's power that allowed him and chose him to rule. Elohim showed that even though his people were cast off and in captivity, he was still with them. The best part of that is that it's even more true today because he has given us his set-apart spirit. For those that are born again, we have him every day and second of our lives. He never leaves us. He wants us to have faith and trust like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Do you? In the next part of the series, we will go into the end of the story in Daniel. All this can be found in the book of Daniel. It reads like a story. I want you to learn faith and trust in Elohim from this part of the series. Even when all odds seem to be against you and not in your favor, that's exactly when you need to trust in Elohim. He uses his chosen people as an example to the world. But because of the blood of Yahshua, we all have access to Elohim now. Don't take his gift for granted. Serve him today. If this blessed you, please like the video and share it with others who may be blessed. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I want to say I appreciate all of your support, comments, and thank you especially to those who have donated on my site. It's truly a blessing to me. Thanks again. I love you all. In the last part of the series, we saw Judah captive in Babylon. They were taken from their land and now forced to live in Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar wanted to assimilate them with his people. I briefly explained that when a nation conquers another land and its people, it's not just about ruling by force. The best way to rule over a people is to spread their culture to younger generations. They take their language, their traditions, their religion, and they teach it to the younger generation. King Nebuchadnezzar tried to do the same thing with Judah when they were taken captive. He called for the best-looking, brightest young men from Judah and educated them for 3 years. All this to further the kingdom of Babylon. As we saw in part 9, Elohim intervened in this process of assimilation, and what happened after that was inverted. King Nebuchadnezzar was humbled and wound up praising Yahweh. This was done in part through Daniel, who was blessed by Elohim with knowledge and the interpretations of dreams. Elohim used these nations to make his great name known to these other nations and empires, establishing his kingdom. Anytime his true servants were tested, he was there to protect them and bring a testimony. Sometimes he used your troubles to reveal his greatness, but it only works when you submit to him and let it show. There was more evidence to be shown of the greatness of Yahweh, and this is what this part of the series will show. Let's begin. So we left off with Judah in captivity in Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar had multiple interactions with the people of Judah that caused him to praise Yahweh. His change of heart was influenced from Daniel and his companions. In the end, Elohim humbled Nebuchadnezzar so much that Nebuchadnezzar praised Elohim as the king of heaven. So Nebuchadnezzar's reign had ended, and it was turned over to his son Belshazzar. Belshazzar, the king, had a great feast for 1,000 of his great men. He was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, so that the king and his mighty men, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. So they brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of Elohim, which had been in Jerusalem. The king and his mighty men, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. In that same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote it. Then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened, and his knees knocked against each other. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. The king spoke, saying to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck, and he shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Now all the king's wise men came, but they could not read the writing or even interpret for the king. King Belshazzar was greatly troubled. His countenance was changed, and his mighty men were astonished. His queen came to the banquet hall and said, "O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts trouble you, nor let your countenance change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy Elohim, and in the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. Your father, the king, made him chief of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers, inasmuch as excellent spirit, knowledge, understanding, interpreting dreams, solving riddles, and explaining enigmas were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will give the interpretation." Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel, who was one of the captives from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard of you, that the spirit of Elohim is in you, and that the light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the astrologers, have brought in before me that they should read this writing and make known to me its interpretation. But they could not give the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of you, and that you can give interpretations and explain enigmas. Now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and you shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Daniel answered and said before the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and a majesty, glory, and honor. And because of the majesty that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whomever he wished, he executed. Whomever he wished, he kept alive. Whomever he wished, he set up. And whomever he wished, he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. Then he was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men, and appoints over it whomever he chooses. But you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this, and you have lifted yourself up against Yahweh. They have brought the vessels of his house before you, and you and your mighty men, your wives and your concubines, have drunk wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which you do not see or hear or know. And Elohim, who holds your breath in his hands and owns all your ways, you have not glorified. Then the fingers of the hand were sent from him, and this is the inscription that was written: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of each word. Mene, Elohim has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a chain of gold around his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. But that very night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. The empire of Babylon was overtaken. This was the second Babylon. The first one was from Nimrod, the second being taken to great heights by King Nebuchadnezzar, and the last one was yet to come. This goes back to King Nebuchadnezzar's dream in part 9. It was told to him in a dream given to him by Elohim that this would all happen. And of course it did. Elohim keeps his word. King Darius set over the kingdom 120 viceroys to be over the whole kingdom, and over them 3 governors, whom Daniel was one. Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and viceroys because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and viceroys sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault, because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So these governors and viceroys gathered before the king and said thus to them, "King Darius, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and viceroys, the counselors and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish a decree and sign the writing, so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter." And King Darius signed the written decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day, and prayed, and gave thanks before Elohim, as was his custom since early days. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before Elohim. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. "Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king answered and said, "The thing is true, according to the law of Medes and Persians, which does not alter." So they answered and said before the king, "Daniel, who was one of the captains from Judah, does not show due regard for you, O king, or for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day." And the king, when he heard these words, was greatly displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. Then these men approached the king and said to the king, "Now, O king, that is the law of the Medes and Persians, that no decree or statute which the king establishes may be changed." So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, "Elohim, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you." Then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and the signets of his mighty men, that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. Now the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no musicians were brought before him. Also his sleep went from him. And the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angels and shut the lions' mouths, so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also, O king, I have done no wrong before you. Now the king was exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatsoever was found on him, because he believed in his God. And the king gave the command, and they brought those men who accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. And the lions overpowered them, and broke all their bones in pieces, before they ever came to the bottom of the den. Then King Darius wrote, To all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men must tremble and must fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and steadfast forever. His kingdom is one which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has delivered Daniel from the power of lions. So Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and Cyrus, king of Persia. Now in the first year of Darius' reign, Daniel understood that the words of Yahweh came to the prophet Jeremiah, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. This word can be found in Jeremiah chapter 29. It says, Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders, which were carried away captives, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. Thus say Yahweh, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon, build houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat their fruit, take wives and beget sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands, so that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may be increased in there and not diminished. And seek the peace of the city where I have caused you to be carried away captive, and pray to Yahweh for it. For in its peace you will have peace. For thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, nor listen to your dreams which you have caused to be dreamed. For they prophesy falsely to you in my name. I have not sent them, says Yahweh. For thus says Yahweh, after 70 years are completed at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you and cause you to return to this place. Jeremiah prophesied that the captivity would only be 70 years, and Daniel recognized the time and started praying for this deliverance. It would come very soon when Cyrus, the king of Persia, took control. The book of Daniel has 12 chapters. The content of this part of the series and part 9 can be found in chapters 1 through 6. After that, it goes into a lot of prophecy. The book of Daniel holds much end-time prophecy. Elohim gave visions of the end that really shook Daniel up. If you want to understand end times prophecy, you should read chapters 7 through 12. It's a book that you really must read to understand end times. But this story is important to grasp because it covers what happened while Judah was in captivity. These are the important things you should understand. 1. Jeremiah warned Judah before they were taken captive. You can find this warning in Jeremiah chapter 25. 2. King Nebuchadnezzar was shown dreams from Elohim that only Daniel was able to interpret. None of Babylon's astrologers, magicians, or sorcerers had enough power to do so. 3. Elohim gave Nebuchadnezzar a dream about the coming world empires and the kingdom of Messiah that would consume all these empires and never be destroyed. 4. Elohim humbled King Nebuchadnezzar, later having King Nebuchadnezzar praise Elohim. 5. Babylon was overtaken by the Medes-Persian Empire. 6. Daniel was betrayed for worshiping Elohim and was sent to the lion's den, which Elohim delivered him from. 7. The king of Medes decreed that his kingdom was to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, very much like what Nebuchadnezzar commanded his people after Daniel's companions were saved from the fiery furnace. 8. Jeremiah prophesied that Judah's captivity would only be for 70 years. All this information just confirms just how awesome and great Elohim is. He truly is the Most High and worthy to be praised. All these other nations and their gods don't have stories of defeating Elohim. And anytime Elohim's people were taken and placed under curses, they were always warned and always provoked it. If believers in the Messiah all would just read their Bibles and apply it, the message would ring loud and clear that we need to submit to his will because he is not to be toyed with. Can you imagine how bad of a decision it would be to know about his word and still not make it a priority to read it? He's giving you many different lessons on how he reacts to sin, as well as how he reacts to those who love and trust him. The worst mistake would be to say with your mouth that you love him, while at the same time keep your heart from him. This series is to drive the point home that he is awesome, and his word tells us about him. The world doesn't know him because they don't read his word. Please don't be a part of that. Right now, we're all in the lion's den. It's a wicked world, and we must submit to him, and we must trust in him. But we must be willing to go through whatever he wants us to go through in order to serve him and make his great name known, in order to minister to others. It's our purpose. It's his will. We must submit to it. He is coming soon, and if you're watching this and have been watching my series, he wants you to be ready for him. Make sure you are. Once again, if this blessed you, please share it with others. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please do so. I appreciate all the love and support you all give. It really helps me each week in making these videos. Thank you for it. I love you all. In the last part of my series, we saw Daniel in the lion's den. From Daniel's faith, we saw how the other nations came to know of the power of Elohim. Daniel was continuously tested while Judah was in captivity, but he was highly favored still. Through the change of control from Babylon to Persia, he still had people who were jealous of his favor, so they schemed and plotted against him. They knew that the only way to find fault against him was to make worshiping Elohim against the law. Before we move on, it needs to be understood that this may happen to you. There will come a time when the world is fully prepared to transition to full worship of Satan. They will make it illegal for you to worship Elohim. They will make it illegal for you to live on the principles you know is right. For some in other countries, this is your reality right now. You must use Daniel as an example for you. Far away captive in an unknown land around unknown people, he chose to stay true to Elohim. He remembered the word that was given to Judah from the prophets like Jeremiah, and he held on to it. He lived by it and had faith, so much that the kings of Babylon and Persia both found their own praise in Elohim. He allowed Elohim to show his power because he never lost sight of who was in control. He submitted to Elohim's will. We all need to learn from this and apply this today, because we are in the period where our faith will be tested most. And if we don't allow the power of the Holy Spirit to move within us, we are not allowing the purpose Elohim created us for to fully manifest. We all have assignments. We all have gifts. We all have people we need to impact and seeds we need to either plant or water. We need to have faith like Daniel, because like I said in part 10, we are in the lion's den, and the world wants to eat us alive. If we do not put on the full armor of Elohim and submit to his will, instead of being delivered from the den, we will be conquered by it. Now, where we are in this series is bringing us closer to the Messiah. I'm very excited about that. But before we get there, there's some information that is needed to be understood. This part needs to be understood because this is what is happening right before your eyes. It's truly amazing, and I hope the Holy Spirit uses this video to reveal to you what it has revealed to me. Let's begin. So we ended with King Darius of Medes giving a decree to the empire that the God of Daniel was to be respected and feared. He declared Elohim as the living God and that his kingdom shall not be destroyed because he delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. The Medes Persian now feared Elohim. To understand the rest of the history, we find ourselves in the book of Ezra. We are now in the reign of King Cyrus of Persia. In the first year of King Cyrus's reign, the words of Yahweh given from the mouth of Jeremiah were fulfilled. Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also put it in writing, saying, "Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth, Yahweh, Elohim of the heavens, has given me. And he has commanded me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is among you of all his people? May Elohim be with him. and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of Yahweh. And whoever is left in any place where he dwells, let the men of his place help him with silver and gold, with goods and livestock, besides the freewill offerings for the house of Elohim, which is in Jerusalem. Solomon's temple that was destroyed when Babylon took siege of Judah and Jerusalem was now going to be rebuilt. What needs to be understood is that this decision did not come while Judah was in their own land. The king of the world empire at the time made this proclamation. Elohim spoke through Jeremiah in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 10 through 14. It says, "For thus says Yahweh, when 70 years are completed, at Babel I shall visit you, and establish my good word toward you, to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I am planning for you, declares Yahweh, plans of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and an expectancy. Then you shall call on me, and shall come and pray to me, and I shall listen to you. And you shall seek me, and shall find me, when you search for me with all your heart. And I shall be found by you, declares Yahweh. And I shall turn back your captivity, and shall gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I have driven you, declares Yahweh. And I shall bring you back to the place from which I have exiled you." The 70 years were up, and he was keeping his word. And he did this through King Cyrus of Persia. Here's how awesome Elohim is. Over a century earlier, through Yahweh, spoken through the prophet Isaiah, he prophesied saying, "Who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and he shall perform all my pleasure, saying to Jerusalem, you shall be built, and to the temple, your foundation shall be laid." This can be found in Isaiah chapter 44, verse 28. And then chapter 45, verses 1 through 5 says, "Thus says Yahweh to his anointed, Cyrus, whose right hand I have held, to subdue nations before him and loose the armor of kings, to open before him the double doors, so that the gates will not be shut. I will go before you and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of bronze and cut the bars of iron. I will give you the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that you may know that I, Yahweh, who called you by your name, am the Elohim of Israel. For Jacob, my servant's sake, and Israel, my elect, I have even called you by your name. I have named you, though you have not known me. I am Yahweh, and there is no other. There is no God besides me. I will gird you, though you have not known me." Elohim had this plan long ago. He knew of Judah's disobedience before it even occurred, because it's all according to his plan and will. These events just prove his power and awesomeness. All his prophecy came true. So please don't doubt for a second the word and prophecy of Elohim. So Cyrus let Judah go back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. And that's what the book of Ezra is about. The head of the fathers' houses of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all whose spirits Elohim had moved, arose to go up and build the house of Yahweh in Jerusalem. Ezra chapter 2 tells of the families that went back to Judah to rebuild the temple. All these people from families who had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away to Babylon. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, everyone to his own city. And when the 7th month had come, the children of Israel built the altar for Elohim to offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the law of Moses. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to Yahweh, although the foundation of the temple had not been laid. Now in the 2nd month of the 2nd year, the priests and the Levites began work and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and above to oversee the work of the house of Yahweh. They were adversaries of Judah and Benjamin, and they heard that the descendants of those taken captive to Babylon came back and were building the temple for Yahweh, Elohim of Israel. They came to Zerubbabel, one of the leaders and the heads of the fathers' houses, and said to them, "Let us build with you, for we seek your God as you do, and we have sacrificed to him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, who brought us here." But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the heads of the fathers' houses of Israel said to them, "You may do nothing with us to build a house for our God, but we alone will build to Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, has commanded us." Then the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. They troubled them in building and hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose through all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. There were obstacles in rebuilding the temple, and if it was any other nation, it would not have been rebuilt. But this was just not any other nation. The temple finally was rebuilt. It was finished in the 6th year of the reign of King Darius of Persia. Then the children of Israel, the priests, and the Levites and the rest of the descendants of captivity celebrated the dedication of the house of Elohim with joy. And they offered sacrifices at the dedication of this house of Elohim: 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and as a sin offering for all Israel, 12 male goats, according to the number of tribes of Israel. And the descendants of captivity kept the Passover. Judah and Jerusalem was restored. There are more details to this that you can read about in the book of Ezra. There's only 10 chapters, but this is what you needed to know, and there's very good reason. If you're paying attention to current events, does any of this sound familiar? This part of the story, while it seemed that we were ending the story of Judah in the Old Testament, seems to be one of the most important lessons of them all. Here's why. The Israelis just last month celebrated their 70th anniversary since they were said to be brought back to the land of Israel. This was a big deal for them. During the 70 years, they have been fighting for control of Jerusalem, which they have shared with Palestine. This is the reason why we hear about a two-state solution. They want to control Jerusalem, and so does Palestine. So they have celebrated their 70 years from exile. This is like a parallel to the history I just explained to you when Judah was in exile in Babylon for how long? Yes, 70 years. You must understand it's no coincidence they are celebrating 70 years. I mean, how many 70-year anniversaries have you seen in the world? 10, 25, 50, 100. Those are normal benchmarks for celebration. But 70? Not so much. No coincidence. But let's keep going. So while they're celebrating 70 years since they became a recognized state within the world system, something also is happening that hasn't happened over 70 years. Donald Trump has recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel. No other president has been so bold to do so, even though others have made the claim they would.
As soon as I take office, I will begin the process of moving the United States ambassador to the city of Israel as chosen as its capital.
Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel, and it must remain undivided.
But it just so happens, as we come to the 70-year anniversary of the creation of the state of Israel, Donald Trump has declared Jerusalem their capital. This is complete parallel to King Cyrus of Persia. King Cyrus of Persia, leader of the world empire at the time, brought back control of Judah and Jerusalem to the children of Israel. Donald Trump, president of the United States, supposed leader of the free world, is bringing the recognition of Jerusalem to the Israelis for the first time in 70 years. Please understand, none of this is a coincidence. Let me prove it to you. Do you know who Donald Trump is being compared to? Yes, King Cyrus. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is really happening before your eyes.
So we remember the proclamation of the great king, Cyrus the Great, Persian king, 2,500 years ago. He proclaimed that the Jewish exiles in Babylon can come back and rebuild our temple in Jerusalem. We remember how a few weeks ago, President Donald J. Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Mr. President, this will be remembered by our people throughout the ages.
The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, made the comparison himself, and some others in the American news media are doing the same thing.
Donald Trump recognized history. He, like King Cyrus before him, fulfilled the biblical prophecy of the gods worshipped by Jews, Christians, and yes, Muslims, that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish state, and that the Jewish people finally deserve a righteous, free, and sovereign Israel.
Before the 2016 presidential election, some evangelical Christians began comparing Donald Trump to King Cyrus, the biblical king who's credited with allowing Jews to return to Jerusalem from exile in the Babylonian Empire. The idea behind the comparison is that a non-believing leader can be used by God to enact policies that help advance the interest of believers, in this case, Christians and Jews.
They're even putting Donald Trump's face on an Israeli coin to honor him. There was a reason why no other president had made a move like this, though Israel has been America's biggest ally in the Middle East pretty much since its conception. There's also a reason why Donald Trump has made this major declaration. What the powers that be bet on is that we don't know our Bible history well enough to make the parallels. Well, I know none of these events happening is a coincidence. And I know for certain that Elohim did not orchestrate this part of my series to align perfectly on the week of the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. He has made this part of the series for all with ears to hear, to see for yourself that the end times Bible prophecy is approaching shortly. The Israelis have been pleading to rebuild the temple.
And all the monotheistic religions, Christian, Jews, and Muslims, all feel like this is their place of worship. And so it's very controversial of who's going to actually end up on this mount.
Do you think the three religions could share the Temple Mount?
Personally, I don't, but there is a huge movement about coexisting on the Temple Mount. And even recently, within the last 2 weeks, I know of a meeting between Christians and Muslims and Jews who all are talking about what are the possibilities and how could they establish both a temple and a mosque on the Temple Mount.
What kind of plans are being made to build a third temple?
There are actually quite a few, and depending on the group that you talk to, different architectural designs have been made. So one group is doing a design more like Herod's temple, and it would be on the Temple Mount, and I don't believe that they would have a mosque that would be there. There are other groups that are more focused on the design that's given in Ezekiel, chapters 40 through 48, which is the next structure in Scripture that God said to build the temple in this way. And then even some archaeological research has been done recently that would say that the Holy of Holies is not under the Dome of the Rock, which is the most common assumption, but a little bit to the north. And that's why the coexist movement is moving forward, is because it's possible that they could be right next to each other on the Temple Mount.
And with all that is going on between the 70-year anniversary, the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, Donald Trump being paralleled and compared to King Cyrus, as well as the provocation of war with Iran, we are in the midst of true Bible prophecy. If you have been watching this series, Elohim is trying to get your attention, that you need to focus on him right now. There is nobody making all these connections as far as I can tell. And most major Christian media sources are praising all these actions. Nobody else is bringing clarity to all these pivotal, unprecedented events. And if they do talk about it, they're praising the actions. If you remember from part 6 of the series, I explained how the temple is a big deal in Freemasonry. Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, just said that Jerusalem must bring all faiths together.
Jerusalem must remain a city that brings people of all faiths together, to visit, to worship, to respect each other, and to appreciate the majesty of history and the glory of God's creation.
King Cyrus didn't just bring about Judah's return to Jerusalem. He also brought about the beginning of the building of the temple. All the events currently transpiring are moving towards that goal. The only difference this time will be when the Israelis decide to rebuild the temple. Do you remember how the other adversarial nations tried to help the temple? Judah declined their offer. This third temple, the other adversarial nations will offer to help rebuild it, and the Israelis will accept the help, because this third temple will not be built for Elohim, but for the God of all faith, which, if you have been watching this series, leads all the way back to that old serpent, the devil, who deceived the whole world. This is why Jared Kushner said Jerusalem is to bring together all faiths. If you know any Bible prophecy, you know the third temple is a big part of it. And the events of today are clearly a wake-up call for those who know their history. There are no coincidences. This is all about the Antichrist and the one world religion. Everyone keeps saying the same things, but it's like no one is listening. They keep saying Jews, Christians, Muslims worship together.
Over the past 7 decades, the Israeli people have built a country where Jews, Muslims, and Christians and people of all faiths are free to live and worship according to their conscience and according to their beliefs. Jerusalem is today and must remain a place where Jews pray at the Western Wall, where Christians walk the stations of the cross, and where Muslims worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Jerusalem must remain a city that brings people of all faiths together, to visit, to worship, to respect each other, and to appreciate the majesty of history and the glory of God's creation.
Jews, Christians, and Muslims do not worship the same God. Jews and Christians should. But the people that the world refers to as Jews today, that want the temple to be rebuilt, do not recognize Yahshua as the Messiah. They are waiting for another Messiah that better suits them, just like Muslims are looking for their Mahdi. This is all about the one world religion. It's setting the stage for the Antichrist, and this is happening right before your eyes. Listen to their words closely.
La mayor parte de los habitantes del planeta se declaran creyentes. Esto debería provocar un diálogo entre las religiones. No debemos dejar de orar por él y colaborar con quienes piensan distinto.
Confío en Buda.
Creo en Dios.
Creo en Jesucristo.
Creo en Dios, Alá.
Muchos piensan distinto, sienten distinto, buscan a Dios o encuentran a Dios de diversa manera. En esta multitud, en este abanico de religiones, hay una sola certeza que tenemos para todos. Todos somos hijos de Dios.
This part of the series was important because of the parallels it has with current events. Literally, in the same week I'm making this part, these events are happening. And I had no idea that this part would align with these current events until I started making this. I know for certain that Elohim is trying to get everyone's attention that's watching this. I hope he has. We are at the end of the story of the Old Testament. The Second Temple has been rebuilt, and Judah is back in their land with control of Jerusalem. That is, until Greece and then Rome take over. We will now be introduced to the Messiah, and that's where we will be next week. From this part of the series, you need to know: 1. After the 70 years of captivity, the words of Jeremiah were fulfilled, and Judah was freed from captivity. 2. King Cyrus of Persia freed Judah and made a world decree that Judah was to rebuild their temple and take back control of Jerusalem. 3. The Second Temple was built. 4. This was the temple that Yahshua was in, and that was torn down by Rome in 70 AD. 5. There are major parallel events happening right now. 6. Israelis are celebrating their 70 years anniversary from being out of exile. Donald Trump, President of the United States, has declared Jerusalem capital of Israel by moving the U.S. Embassy. All of this happened this past Monday, May 14th, 2018. Number 7. Donald Trump is being compared to King Cyrus. Number 8. The last step is for the rebuilding of the temple. Number 9. Elohim is trying to get your attention. This video was not planned to go this way. The Holy Spirit took me in a different direction than I planned. My hope is that you get the point that Elohim is making a strong gesture to get your attention. He brought you to the series for a reason. What I want is for you to remember these scriptures. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worshipped, so that he sits as Elohim in the temple of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. Do you not remember that when I was still with you, I told you these things? And now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom Yahweh will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all of righteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, Elohim will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who do not believe the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 12. Strong delusion. Don't forget that this is what's occurring around you. Much of this world is under this strong delusion, even many of those who consider themselves in the church. But he has your heart. You could have been doing anything else besides spending the time to watch these videos, but he has your attention. I know there will be some that don't see what's right in front of them, and I pray for you. But if you were once part of the group that believed the lie and was under the strong delusion, but now you can see, all I can say is hallelujah. He is getting your attention because he wants you to be ready for him. Prepare for him. Prepare your family for him. Prepare whoever he sends your way. Stay alert and beware of all Christian media and social media channels that are praising these current events as a good thing. Pray for them. Help them. But do not follow them. The next part of the series, we will be discussing the most important topic, the Messiah. I hope you know him, but if you do not, you will be introduced next week. He took on the sins of the world for you, for everyone. For Elohim loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Whoever is watching this, his sacrifice was for you.
No.
And if you're not blaspheming the Holy Spirit, there isn't anything else that cannot be forgiven.
All right.
We will discuss him and learn about him. From this series, we have come to the conclusion of the important events of the Old Testament, from the covenant Elohim made with Abraham, all the way to the end of captivity of Judah and the rebuilding of the Second Temple. We've seen a lot, and through it all, what should be abundantly clear is that Elohim is awesome. He is worthy to be praised. His love endures forever. He has done mighty things, also that you know he is the great I Am, the Elohim of Israel. He has placed you in his grand design. He planned and orchestrated thousands of years ago for you to be here today to help prepare the bride for the bridegroom, Yeshua. If you understand what was shown in this video, I ask that you share it once on your social media page or text it to a family member or friend. Share this series with someone or everyone. He wants you to be a part of Yeshua's bride and to help prepare it. Will you take on that charge? Either way, thanks for watching. If it has blessed you, please make sure to like this video and share it. Let me know if you understand what is happening before our eyes. If we don't discuss this and wake up those in slumber, who will? Start the conversation here and spread it. As always, thank you sincerely for your support. Thank you especially to those who have donated.
All right. I plan to let this run continually without stopping. We have done 11 in a row videos, and we are at 3 hours and 11 minutes. I don't know why I thought that this would be about 2.5 to 3 hours, but I did the math, and if all these videos were 21 minutes, there's 70 videos. We're talking over 24 hours. So I'm not tying up my streaming service for a whole day for this. I will put a link to all of these videos in the end of this video. 3 hours is long enough. I hope you all have enjoyed the History of Religion series 1 through 11, and you can follow up from there with this. All right. All praises to the Abba. And this is Akazaki Yahoo signing off for this evening on this matter. There actually is another video that I do want to share, which is why I have ended this video early. His stuff is interesting, and I appreciate him for the work that he does. However, yeah, I got something else to get into. All right. Thank you again. Peace and blessings. Shalom wa barukim, and we'll see you next time.